up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to episode 72 of C4SVillains. I am your host, JB, and I am here, as always, with the Council of Villains, my boys, Vash, Chris, and Steve, and we are here to talk about Thor, Love and Thunder. I've been waiting to talk about this movie because when I first saw it, I had no idea how I felt about this movie. This is the first MCU movie where I'm just so mixed that it's hard for me to gather my thoughts, which makes it even more interesting to talk about with this panel of guests that I have here with me. But first, Chris, Vash, Steve, thank you guys so much for joining me on this epised.
Thank you for having me back, as always.
And I'm happy to be back. I haven't been here much this summer, honestly, is what it seems like. I haven't missed this many episodes in a long time.
But Steve, it's always a pleasure to have you, and it's a pleasure to always be here with James, and to get all sweaty and to just it's been 4 years, so I really also want to give a big shout out to John Schnepp. We passed his anniversary of his passing, so I want to give a shout out. And for those that don't know, it's Comic-Con weekend, so it's pretty exciting. And James said that he was pretty excited to review this. To be honest, I didn't give a fuck to review this, and that's the first time I've said this about a Marvel film or doing a review with James with villains, and we're 72 episodes in, and this is the first type of comic book property where I'm like, I would have been fine to just move on to the next thing we cover or talk about or topic, because you know what? It's weird. I'm mixed. I didn't even want to pay to see a second viewing. When it comes to movies like this, I like, no matter if I'm broke, I'll find a way. And you know what? I'll be like, hey, I could just walk to work. It's fine. This
Gentlemen,
movie,
welcome to my world. Not everything can be bunny rabbits and rainbows all the time.
or not everything could be spectacular.
Oh,
You said
wrong
bunny.
thing.
Or technically-
Not everything
Or-
is mighty.
Or technically, not everything could be, or could be blunder.
Oh, God.
Oh, I see.
Anyways.
No, I don't get that one. I didn't get that one.
Inside,
It's on Papa
inside
Holic's title.
baseball.
But Vash mentioned that it's Comic-Con weekend. So today was day 2 of Comic-Con, and there was some pretty good reveals that came out today from Marvel Animation, Lord of the Rings, Walking Dead, and we are going to take the first couple minutes of the show to just kind of talk about 2 of our favorite moments from day 2 of Comic-Con. So Steve, I actually want to start with you, and I want to get your 2 things that made you the most excited from Comic-Con today.
So I watched it right before the show, so of course I was excited about the X-Men. X-Men 97 looks really good. I am super ecstatic to see that Mr. Sinister is back. I want to know how they're going to touch on Mr. Sinister and his relationship with some of the mutants, because I'm a big Gambit fan, so I did like a lot of research on Gambit back in the day, and finding out like his relationship with Mr. Sinister and how it plays onto his powers now was something that was super, super important to Gambit's story. And I really am interested. I'm not sure if they ever touched on it in the old run. I got to rewatch it as an adult. But if they didn't, then I would love to see if they're going to touch on it, on this series. And then seeing Magneto as the leader is going to be something different, because I want to know how the team is going to deal with the fact that Magneto is now their leader. And I'm kind of interested to see how they're going to act around him, like, especially someone like Wolverine that's had encounters with him for all these years and stuff. I'm very interested to see how that's going to go.
Can I toss out a crazy theory that literally just came to my head as Steve was mentioning that Magneto was going to be the leader of the X-Men in X-Men 97? What if X-Men 97 takes place on Earth 838, and the reason Magneto is the leader is because Wanda murdered their Charles Xavier?
Very possible.
Interesting.
Just throwing it out there. We'll see what happens.
That does make sense, because that Professor X had the chair. Oh, interesting.
He was designed after, the Charles Xavier from the original X-Men cartoon. So
Yeah,
that's
a really good point.
Interesting theory, for sure.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
anyway, continue. Sorry.
Steve, what's your second one?
My second one is What If, and it's literally because of this one title of Hella, the What If Hella story. I'm interested to see what they come up with for What If Hella story. I'm wondering if they're going to go the route of what if, Hella was raised with Thor and Loki, and somehow she's good, or if we're going to get like a whole what if she won type thing or something. I'm interested to see what they do with it. So that one story alone was like enough for me to be like, all right, I want to know what if this got going. And then hearing that they're already starting production on season 3 means that like we're going to be in for what if for a little while, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to see what they got going.
Same. Chris, what about you?
I'm also really pumped for X-Men 97, but the thing I was most excited for going into this panel was Spider-Man freshman year, because it had been advertised as the MCU Peter Parker's freshman year of high school, his origin story. So I was looking forward to seeing, how he got the spider bite. If there is actually an Uncle Ben in this universe from No Way Home, we kind of know that there kind of isn't an Uncle Ben. May kind of fills the role of Ben, which I also really dig. But based on everything we got in the panel today, it looks like even though in all the press releases that they're sending out to people, they are referring to this show as taking place within the MCU, a lot of the things that we saw today seem contradictory to the Peter Parker we've seen in the main continuity 616 movie MCU, and it looks like this show is going to be more of a multiverse show, which I'm okay with. I'm a little disappointed, but the aesthetic that they've gone with for the show, I think, is so charming that I don't really care a whole lot. Like, I'm still interested to see what they're able to do with it, but I'd be lying if I said that I'm not a little disappointed that it's not directly going to be our Peter Parker from the MCU, but like a variant of that Peter Parker. How did you guys feel about all the stuff that was released for freshman year today?
I'm mixed on it. Like, not that I'm not excited, but it's more as like they give us snippets. Like Chris just said, is this in the 616? Is this in the multiverse? Is this because we saw literally Osborn. We have never seen Osborn with our Peter Parker version of Tom Holland.
He's taking the place of Tony Stark.
Tony Stark.
Version.
So
he's like going to be a mentor figure.
So it just makes you question like, what universe is it, or is it like a one-off of a standalone, or is it like a one of a what if type of style? So it's like, I'm excited. Like I made the joke earlier, Spectacular. I'm right now currently binge watching Spectacular Spider-Man. So I love Spider-Man. That's one of my top 3 favorite characters all the time. But to see it like Marvel always makes decisions, but they don't really make decisions just for nothing. They always have a reason. So it's like, what was the reason to make Spider-Man with freshman year? Is this gonna connect to the MCU in some way, or is this just to fill in some gaps of Osborn and everything and somehow connect to the multiverse? So like, I'm excited, but more kind of skeptical. Like, where are we gonna go with this project? So I'm curious to see where it goes.
Cautiously optimistic.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited personally because it does seem that it's going to be in an alternate, universe. We know from No Way Home that no one even knows Norman Osborn or who he is. There's no Oscorp or anything like that.
Right.
So I think seeing the image of like Norman Osborn and seeing Doc Ock in the way that we see him, it seems like, yeah, this is going to take place in an alternate universe. Much like you mentioned again, Chris, like X-Men 97, it could be in an alternate universe as well. It doesn't seem like it's taking place in 616, which is very, very interesting. I love that we're expanding the multiverse even more with the cartoons and stuff.
The only thing that concerns me, and maybe concern is too strong a word to use in this, but if it's just going to be a multiverse story, why does it have to be marketed as Marvel Studios? Like, just make a Spider-Man cartoon, man. Like,
That's
if it's going to have no impact on the main continuity of the MCU. And I'm in the process of writing a paper or an article for Careful for Spoilers right now about the current state of Phase 4. And one of my problems right now, a little tease, is that the multiverse has kind of given them a get out of jail free card to do whatever they want, and it seems like all the stakes are gone, and there's no connectivity anymore, because if they wanted to, if something didn't, rub audiences the right way, they could just be like, alternate version of Thor, like multiverse Thor, and I don't like that, because the first 3 phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe had some of the best film continuity, minus like 2 things that I've ever seen in any film franchise. Like, they meticulously combed over everything that happened in every movie. And if there was something that seemed out of place later on in the MCU, they were able to retcon it in a way to make it fit. But it seems like that's kind of long gone at this point. And granted, we're going to get the panel on Saturday, and we'll have more info from Kevin Feige, and I'm excited to hear about that. But if you're going to make a Spider-Man show, I love Spider-Man just like Vash, like, just make a Spider-Man show, man. Like, it doesn't have to be under the umbrella of Marvel Studios. It could just be like Marvel Spider-Man,
I mean, I think you have to make the distinction that it's not Sony and it's not some other studio making it.
Maybe that has to do with it, actually. Like, the legality of it. Know
that this is Marvel Studios version. You won't see any of like the Sony Spider-Verse characters. This is Marvel Studios, and it takes place in one of the many universes in the multiverse within the MCU. That's how I see it.
But the thing that sucks is because the only type of successful Spider-Man show they have done, which was with Marvel, Ultimate Spider-Man, and that only lasted 4 seasons. And they had Nick Fury, they had Ms. Marvel, they had other characters that really did well and succeeded. But now with the Disney Plus, they haven't had anything animated, only What If, and also Star Wars Vision, that have actually succeeded within the Star Wars / Marvel umbrella with the animation side. So with the Disney Plus side, like, I'm hoping for them, just, it doesn't have to connect to the multiverse. Just make kind of like, Spider-Man is such a big draw. Now with Disney Plus, you can make a type of bingeable show for audience to just enjoy, add characters, Avengers, but they haven't jumped onto that yet. Yes, Disney Plus is about 2 years old since it started during the pandemic or the year before the pandemic. But still, at the end of the day, it's like, you have all this money, but you're not putting the time for it with other properties that you could just establish. So like James just said, it's like, with this new show of Spider-Man Freshman Year, like, it's connected, but to what extent? Like, do we need to even watch it since it's a multiverse? That's what most people that are casual audience, like my girl or my mom or any regular person who just watches movies just to enjoy, that's what they're going to think, like, why do I need to watch this? Like, is this part of the 616, like the Marvel Avengers of Tony Stark, played by Robert Downey Jr.? Is this the same storyline that we saw Tom Holland? That's what most people think. Like, if it's not, what's the point? I could just, I could watch this, 3 years from now, 6 months from now. They don't need to do it right there and then.
Well, I mean, that's the best part about streaming, right? Watch it whenever you want to.
Right.
But Chris, what's your second thing?
I'm going to go outside of the comic book world. And the second thing that I was super amped up to see today was Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power trailer. This is the best trailer that they've shown thus far. And I'm finally very excited to see this show. This is one of the most expensive television shows that's ever been made. And, the last couple trailers that we've gotten have been a little lackluster, at least in my opinion. But this one, you could kind of finally see the money on the screen. So yeah, I'm fully on board now for the Rings of Power, and I like Lord of the Rings. I like The Hobbit. I've read the books, so I'm a Tolkien fan. But everything that they had released so far wasn't gripping me until today. So that trailer's awesome. If you haven't seen it, it's like over 3 minutes long. I highly recommend going to check it out.
Facts. Vash, what about you? What 2 things were you most excited about from today?
So going to the, like Chris said, going to the comic book, the actual comic book runs, I'm actually very curious about Spider-Man: The Last Hunt. And it's a 5-issue limited series, and it's debuting this November, and it will be a story of the origin of Kraven the Hunter. So that's something that we don't really know much about Kraven. We just know that he knows how to hunt animals, and then once he met Spider-Man, he's like, that is just his biggest fish that he ever caught, and he wants to hunt. That's what the most type of general audience we know of him and his comic book runs. But we never knew his origin. Like, why is he the hunter? Why is he Kraven and everything? Each type of animation or cartoon has done their own type of story, but never his type of origin. So this is pretty interesting after I think he got established during the 80s. So it's like a good 40 years later. So it's pretty interesting what they're going to establish with his character. 2 is the X-Men sequel. Because 1, I also got some words to say to Disney. Y'all gonna chronologically put in order
Chronologically,
in
Probably.
order just because you're gonna make the sequel. But you have Clone Wars there for almost goddamn 2 years, and you know damn well people have to go to a website just to find the damn order, but you're not gonna do it your damn self. Yes, I get it. But did you guys put the Star Wars the final season like a year ago? You couldn't do it there for Star Wars Clone Wars, but you guys gonna do it for the X-Men sequel? Like, come on, guys. What are your priorities? You guys don't give a fuck about Lucasfilm right now, or you just have all the different departments? I get I'm throwing jokes, but money aside, yeah, half the money. You got to just pay some intern, some type of person to literally put each episode in order. It's not that hard. So, but
I'm fully
overall,
on board. I'm on board, Vash.
yeah,
Same.
trust me. Like it's just once I saw that tweet from I think was it from C4S or some news outlet, and I'm like, yeah, regular just dead ass just put the whole extra, which is great for me because now it gives me a reason to more watch it after my binge of the Spectacular Spider-Man. But still, like, yeah, guys, awesome. I'm happy they're in production for season 2 for the series. And it shows they have a whole game plan. The same thing for What If season 3. I'm not shocked, but it makes sense since they know they're gonna do phase 4, 5, 6 at the moment with their Marvel Cinematic Universe. So it makes sense they have a What If, season 2 already and the season 3 in production. And we're still in the so-called pandemic. So at the end of the day, they already know how to work around COVID, guidelines and everything. People work from home and such that. So for things to be already in department, they are looking ahead. That's what most companies don't know how to do. Warner Brothers. So it's not very hard.
EC. What about? Did we do you, James? What about you?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go now. So
What are your 2?
So my 2 picks, like we already talked about, X-Men 97. I mean, X-Men, the animated series, is one of the greatest cartoons ever fucking made. It probably has the greatest opening sequence ever made. I love that series. I've seen it so many times back to back to back. And I can't wait for this new series to pretty much continue the story. It was great to hear that the old voice actors are all coming back to come back to voice the characters in X-Men 97. Extremely excited for that. Steve, like you mentioned, Gambit's one of my favorite characters, so I can't wait to see and hear Gambit again in this. Learning that Magneto's the leader of the X-Men, it's like, how the fuck did that happen? But as soon as Chris said his theory, it's like, that would be actually kind of compelling. It would be great to explore 838 a lot more if this is the X-Men from that universe. That would be fucking sick. And him
so crazy.
taking over the X-Men in honor of his best friend. I think that would be really, really awesome. And just to switch it up even more, I'm also going to pick a comic. I'm really excited for Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. I think Lord of the Rings is the greatest trilogy ever made. You can go at your mom. Don't talk to me.
I haven't seen it.
But the
Vash,
second one that I'll recommend, just to give it some spotlight, is the Batman prequel comic Riddler Year One. Paul Dano's Riddler is amazing in the Batman, and
Written by Paul Dano, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty curious about that, James. How do you feel about that? Because I'm excited, but also not saying skeptical in a bad way, but more of a curiosity way.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I mean, nobody knows this version of Riddler more than Paul Dano and Matt Reeves. And they've talked about it on set constantly of what a backstory would look like for this guy. And for Paul Dano to actually be writing it. And then we also got a sneak peek of some of the art from the comic, and it looks fucking incredible. So it's like, I'm really, really excited for this, to learn more about this Riddler, before the events of the movie. So I wanted to give that a little spotlight. I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Did you see that Tom King's also writing a... Oh my gosh, what's the title of it? I don't think it's Gotham Year One. It's basically Gotham without Batman, like the early days of Gotham city PD fighting crime before Batman came back.
Sick. I would
Yeah.
love that.
That was announced today too. A lot
may
of
I
year
also-
ones. Year one's a great like subtitle for their comics. Very
Yeah.
popular.
May I also give like a honorable mention?
Sure.
The Avatar film that we're getting in year 2024.
Oh
Mm,
yeah.
yeah.
It will be the original Avatar gang, meaning Avatar, Aang, Katara, Katara, Zuko, Asaka, and Toph. It will be when they're in their adults. So that's something that's damn excited. We have read it in books, but to see it in a movie format, and the original first film of the production studio was going to be about Kyoshi, but they change it up because they know damn well we want to see the actual animated version of Aang when he's in his true peak form and everything. So that's what got me excited. I grew up with the show, and to see this,
You
it's an
know, the
honorable.
young actor that portrayed Aang in the early 2000s, his voice has to be deep enough at this point to
Yeah,
play an
that's-
adult Aang, right? Like,
yes,
Yeah.
That
has
would
to
be
be.
cool.
I hope so.
That would be cool if he actually voice acted the character.
That would be cool if they got the original, because I know they chose somebody else whenever they had Aang appear in Legend of Korra.
Well, I'm just excited to see Zuko. Out of all people, I'm just excited to see Zuko personality and his relationship with the Fire Nation. That's what I'm gonna say. For those that haven't read the books after the show, read them. They're amazing.
They're very
They're
good.
good written. I highly suggest anybody to go pick up a comic book of those because it's only like all the issues together. I think it's less than $100. That's all I'm gonna say. So you will be that's a steal for what their story is told, and the more in depth for the folklore is amazing.
Questions are answered about Zuko's mother, which was always a
Yes.
big mystery of the original
Like,
show.
God damn it.
Okay. Yeah, very excited for that too. Just one more thing to tack on to Spider-Man freshman year. I love the fact that Charlie Cox is coming back to voice Daredevil on the
right?
show. That's gonna be fucking sick.
I like that. I'm really confused that like now that you guys have touched on like, is it going to be part of the storyline? Because they said that this is supposed to be the prequel. So
Yeah.
they're,
But
they're
Stephen
stating it.
Strange is doing as well. Our boy Stephen Strange in his old comic book original type of outfit in the blue with the white type of pattern and everything. So it's like, wait a minute. So you have old Doctor Strange style and you have the hood version of Daredevil. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah,
You know-
it's confusing.
Not to prolong our Spider-Man freshman year conversation any further, but earlier in our group chat, Abe was talking about how he thought this was like freshman year of college.
Same.
And after I was looking at all the elements that they released for the show today, I was like, that'd make way more fucking sense. Like,
Because you've
he
seen
met
Charlie
Matt
Cox.
Murdock in No
Yeah.
Way Home. He met Doctor Strange in No Way Home. He now knows about an alternate Doc Ock and Green Goblin. Ned and MJ are not in the show, so this could be like all the friends that he meets at Empire State University. Like Amadeus Cho is in the show. Like he has all these various costumes that he could be building in the science department of Empire State University. And yet all the marketing and all the press still says high school. I actually had to go back and read through press after Abe said that. And I like had that thought just to confirm that somewhere they said high school, and they did. But
Yeah.
it blows my mind.
It's confusing as shit.
It is very
So
confusing.
I'm just gonna wait for it to come out and see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all we can do.
Very, very excited for it. But we will have a much bigger Comic-Con recap next Friday. We'll talk about more stuff that came out today, everything that's coming out tomorrow on the Marvel panel, the WB panel. There's going to be a lot of great shit dropping tomorrow. And anything that trickles in on Sunday, there's not really much that goes on Sunday. But anything that's like noteworthy, we'll talk about it on next Friday's show. That's going to be a lot of fucking fun. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. So without further ado, let's get into our Thor Love and Thunder full spoilers discussion. So we are going to break this down in a couple different sections. We're going to talk about the production of the film. We'll talk about the script. We'll talk about what we liked in like the VFX, cinematography, set design, anything that we want to highlight there. and then we'll go into the character breakdown, and we'll pretty much be able to cover the entire film by just breaking down our favorite moments and our least favorite things about each character throughout the film. So let's get into the production of it. So just want to get your general thoughts on the plot of the film. Having Gore, the God Butcher, coming into this film, someone who was betrayed by his god that he pretty much prayed to every day for food and water for his daughter. Thor is going through this midlife crisis. We find Jane having cancer and finding Mjolnir calling to her, giving her, an extended, life in order to fight in these battles. We get to see Omnipotent City. We get to see more of the gods. We get to meet Zeus. So there's a lot of things that happen in the film. So Chris, starting with you, I just want to get your general thoughts on the script/plot of Thor: Love and Thunder.
I was telling James before we started recording that this movie is rewatchable. There are a lot of things that I do like about this movie. However, in terms of the script, I don't know how tight of a script Taika actually had. And, to be perfectly fair, when it comes to Taika Waititi as a filmmaker, he is one to improvise more than be beholden to any one of his scripts. That's kind of his MO. He likes making movies with his friends. He likes to improvise and find these unique comedic moments in between the lines that are on the script, and I just don't think it was conducive to the type of story that they were telling in this film. As James mentioned, Jane's cancer is a large portion of this film. And I think the way in which that cancer plot is handled in the movie is tonally inconsistent with what people go through in real life when dealing with cancer. I think some of the comedy moments work really, really well, but then when the movie tries to swing back the other direction and be serious, because we've gone so far in the comedy direction and the movie is kind of really absurd in moments, the cancer stuff just really doesn't play. I was saying on the Popaholics podcast when we reviewed this film a couple of weeks ago that eventually I got there with the cancer plot. And by the end, and Jane's sacrifice, I was getting emotional. But man, the first couple times that they're talking about cancer, and maybe this is what Taika was kind of going for, and that Jane Foster just does not want to talk about it, which is understandable. And they try to kind of get out of the cancer conversation as quickly as possible for the first 2 acts of the film, and move on to the comedy again. And I don't think that it respected that content how I would have handled it. So the film is wildly inconsistent in terms of tone, where last time Taika Waititi had an outing in the MCU with Ragnarok, I think Kevin Feige may have reined him in a little bit more, considering that it was his first time directing a Marvel film. So we got this really solid balance for the most part. I know some people really don't like Ragnarok and its tone, but I think there was a better balance of comedy and drama in that film than in Thor: Love and Thunder. I think Kevin Feige may have let the reins off a little too far, and Taika went a little too wacky, which I love in all of his independent projects. Mm-hmm. But for me, it just did not work here in Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yeah, it's a pretty good summary, man. Steve, what about you? Let me get your general thoughts on the script and plot.
General thoughts on the script and plot. I didn't have a problem with everything that was going on. The guys portrayed Gore the God Butcher. That's how he got his power. Cool. We go from there. The cancer and everything, and Thor finding, reconnecting with Jane. I'm cool with that. There was just some things in there that I just wasn't feeling as far as the overall story, and things that we felt like they left out. But I felt like the story itself, it had a good baseline. If this was the summary of okay, Gore the God Butcher, the god betrayed him, this is how he's getting his power. Thor and Jane reconnect. She has cancer. They're gonna find a way to work together to take down Gore the God Butcher. That's that's a good summary. That's a good story.
Sounds like a good movie.
Yeah, it sounds like something good to work with. And
Damn.
and this is my hot take that I was going to say off camera. Honestly and truthfully, I wish they had the darker tone from the first two movies for this movie. Honestly and truthfully, for this particular movie,
Steve, that's not a hot take because I still, out of all four Thor films, I still prefer the first one out of all four.
Steve,
agree with
a
that.
big chunk of what I have to say is based off of what you just said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like Thor, like how Chris said, Thor Ragnarok, it had the perfect like drama slash comedy. It was perfect. But for Gore the God Butcher, it's got to be dark. And I really, really wish they would have went like the first movie tone for this one, and not so much craziness and the rock, the 80s type theme that they were going for some reason. I don't know what it is about the 80s, but they suck when they come to making movies. When you put them in superhero movies and stuff, take me home, just 80s in general. It's Take Me Home Tonight, Wonder Woman 84. It's just for some reason they can't get the 80s right when they put those themes in there. And they were playing with that a little bit. And
Stranger Things kills it with the 80s theming.
They do. But hey, I would rather them get the director from
So,
Stranger
Steve,
Things.
what I'm hearing you say is that gods and 80s don't mix.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman and Thor.
Yeah, but that's what it is. And Take Me Home Tonight, just because that deserves all the slander. Yeah.
Are you talking about the Topher Grace comedy?
Yes, that. It was supposed to be a fake that is the director just wouldn't let go of that 80s show, and he was like, all right, I'm gonna do Take Me Home Tonight. And that'll show you guys for canceling my show. And it sucked as well. It sucked. But anyway, go ahead.
Vash, what about you?
I'm just so mixed on this movie. It's more like the more I think about it, the more I hear you guys, and like Steve hit on the nails. Like, I enjoy the first Thor the most because we get the Thor from comic book and Norse mythology. But when we get this Thor from Taika, Kevin Feige said, "Hey, you did good in Ragnar. We made a bunch of money. Thor 4, I'm gonna let you do what you want." I'm like, no, Kevin, you should have done the opposite. Have him more not strict, but make sure he's got in the ship well. Not having fucking damn goats be fucking there the whole damn time. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, I feel like I saw a article saying that he had that sound because of a song from Taylor Swift or something. I'm like, my dude, really? My dude, really? Like, come on. So that's some BS, but. And towards Chris' point, one of my childhood best friend has cancer currently. And when I saw Jane in the beginning of the film, Jane has stage 4 cancer already for 6 months. Girl looked happy like a chipper. Not happy her smile, but her body wise, her composure. Yeah, girl was getting the IV and everything, but by the middle and end of the film, that's when you saw her stage 4 actually showing. But in the beginning of the film, it should have shown stale just because she'd been going to the hospital and everything. But after 6 months or something, like, yes, each person handled cancer very differently. But just the overall concept, I thought girl was in stage 1. But by the time we heard her tell other people, girl said, "Oh, I've been in stage 4 for a while." And I'm like, okay, you look way better than you should be. Again, maybe it's Marvel decisions not to show too much or for kids and everything. And the more the movie came out and the more I heard some deleted scenes got kicked out, where even Chris made a point on that weekend when he tweeted saying, have we seen Gore the God Butcher actually do the God butchering part? No. We only see it in the first beginning part of the film where we only hear voices within the sword of the Necro Sword, even though we never heard of the actual name being said from Gore, just being said by Thor, and never explained the voices like exactly. It just called it out once or twice. And then after that, we just see gods being killed, but never actually on screen. But on the deleted scenes, it was there. So like Marvel, this is literally a guy called God the Butcher, but we never actually see him doing the butchering. It's like you're going it's like you go to a meat shop to get your chicken cut. I mean, killed, but you don't see it get killed. You just get it. Boom. That's it. It's like, yeah, but you come here to see a butch. Weird reference, but that's the best thing that can come to my head. It's like
Vash, do you mind if I piggyback off of that while we're talking
yeah,
about it?
go ahead.
So it's so strange to me that the MCU is a film franchise that very rarely shows blood. And Taika Waititi went out of his way to frame what god blood looks like at the very beginning of this movie when Gore kills that first god in the opening sequence. It's gold. Right? Following that sequence, with the only characters we see slaughter gods with gushing gold blood are heroes in what's the city called? Omnipotent City? Is that what it's called,
yes,
James?
correct.
Yeah.
So there's literally a scene where Valkyrie slices the arms off of multiple god guards and then like bathes in the golden blood god shower. You know, like why? I'm just it blows my mind that like they would set up that framing device so they could get away with like what is supposed to be a little more gore. You know, they found a smart way to put blood in a kid's movie by making it gold, and yet we never again see a sequence where Gore murders another god and spills all this golden blood. Why?
I get it, because it's kind of like with an anime, you don't see people throw up. When they do throw up, they show rainbow because of the culture. But within this film, it's like you literally got Christian Bale to play Gore the God Butcher, and when he does the God Butcher, all right, cool, he does gold dust. Valkyrie, who is literally the queen and is also a warrior, the queen of Asgard, became
King.
What?
King.
Sorry, the king of Asgard literally became Disneyland, literally, like that's aka Disneyland for them. And it's like we never see like girl complain like, girl, I want action. Come on, Jane, let's go. You're mighty Thor. I need my sis with me. We're gonna kill our people. And you don't really go killing. You kill some gods in the city of gods, and you don't really like, okay, the gold dust, slow motion shot, and you're like, yes, blood on me. I'm like, girl, you got some gold dust on you. I don't know what you're talking about blood. But like, I want to see a warrior. Like, I want to see the Valkyrie we saw in the slow mo shot in Ragnarok, her coming down the horse and like, ah! But we don't see that much. So like, how you're the word that we hear you to be from Thor or the Valkyrie. I want to be a Valkyrie, but you know, can't do that because I'm a woman. I'm like, all right, cool. Jokes aside, where's the warrior aspect? Where is she?
Interesting. Yeah, I can't wait to get into that because I don't think that's what was missing from Valkyrie's character, but we'll get there in the character breakdowns. But for me, general thoughts, like, I think in concept, this film is brilliant. If just in concept, someone told me we're going to cover Gore the God Butcher, we're going to have a scene in Omnipotent City with all the different gods, we're going to have Zeus, Bastet, we're going to have a bunch, Korg's god, we're going to have a bunch of different gods. Thor is going to be going through a midlife crisis after everything he's been through in Endgame. We're going to be following the Jane Foster Mighty Thor run where she has cancer, becomes the Mighty Thor, fights injustice. We're going to have Valkyrie in this position where she's happy to be the king of Asgard, but she misses the battlefield and she just wants to get back to fighting. She doesn't care about shaking hands, kissing babies. She wants to get back to blood and guts. In concept, this is brilliant.
Yeah,
but
that sounds
the
great.
execution does not work for me. I don't want to say at all, but it doesn't work for me on a majority of levels. There is a huge chunk. There's an arc of this movie that I wish was ripped out in favor of something else. The jokes, like I forgot who said it in chat, but the jokes are really fucking corny. I don't think I laughed once. The goats annoyed the shit out of me. We'll talk about that a little bit later. There's just a lot of things that just don't work for me. There's one scene that I think's awesome. Then the following scene, I think it sucks. Then the next scene, I think it's awesome. Then the next scene fucking sucks. And it's kind of this roller coaster. And I was talking to Chris right before we started. It's like Thor Love and Thunder is an extended one shot on Disney Plus. It barely feels like a cohesive, good Thor movie. It just feels like it's just an extended one shot. Someone made a one shot of this story, and I was like, yeah, let's just extend it. And then Taika just went fucking nuts. But like you said, Chris, I don't think Feige was there to rein him the fuck in, because there's a lot of stuff in here that just goes way over the fucking rails, and it honestly bugs the shit out of me. So let's get further deeper on into the film. Chris, I'll kick it back to you. Was there anything that stood out in the production for you in terms of like the VFX, the set design, cinematography? I want you to talk to anything in the production that you liked or didn't like.
Yeah, you know, when I started this conversation, I said that I think this movie is a rewatchable film, and I think most of that is due to the visuals of the movie. They do some really interesting things with the color palette of this movie, and we've talked. You know, I don't know if we've talked here on the show, but we've certainly talked about this in our group chat about how the MCU overall has a very bland color palette. Most of the films, excluding a couple here and there, typically have this like grayness to them, you know? But Taika's gone out of his way to make this movie, for the most part, seem incredibly vibrant. And I really do like that like 80 neon color palette that they're using in all the characters' costumes, because there's an amazing moment in the third act of this film where all the color is sapped from the picture. And I honestly think that that's probably what he was thinking about when doing character design and costume design, and how he wanted the film to look. That way, this one moment where everything becomes black and white is more impactful. And I think that's one of the most visually interesting things the MCU has ever done in any of their movies. So this film isn't entirely without merit. You know, there are some really cool visual things happening here. And I think that's one of my favorite things, is just the color palette of the film. I love, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy. I love Ragnarok because of its like Jack Kirby-esque color palette. Like, this is just more of that, which I really dig and appreciate.
Yeah. Steve, is there anything in the production you wanted to highlight? Cinematography, set design, VFX?
So there was things that were good, like the eye candy and stuff for this movie was pretty good. I loved when Jane Foster first appears and we get to see Thor, the Mjolnir hammer split open and do that little fight scene. I thought that was really dope. Honestly and truthfully, I like the city of what's the city called again?
Omnipotent City.
Omnipotent City. I thought that was done really well. The design and everything was done really well. And then even gore and the shadows that he were using, which I didn't feel like we got enough of that. I thought the shadows were done pretty well as well. And there were a lot of high points of this movie as far as like visually and stuff like that. It's the story that's just bad on this movie, honestly and truthfully. Everything else is done really well. I like Christian Bale. No CGI, so I enjoyed the fact that he's method acting through it and everything like that. I thought that was done really well. There's a lot of good things about this film. It just really just needs to be done over. Why they need a Snyderverse, a Snyder cut, I mean, of this, or anything. Something needs to be done.
Dude, I think Taika was throwing some shade at Zack Snyder during press when people kept asking him about a director's cut of the movie.
Yeah.
He was like, if it's not in my movie, it's because it wasn't good enough. And if the movie was 4 hours long, it would be terrible. So I don't know if he directly meant to like throw shade at Zack Snyder in that moment, but that's a very specific length for a film.
It is.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I was like, I definitely thought that there was a lot of good things in this movie. They has some good stuff going on, but overall, it's just the story that's the problem. I even enjoy Thor's new armor. There's a lot of good stuff about this movie that, like, it looked beautiful. So there was some good points, but I think everything just falls to me for it on story and the writing of this movie.
Vash, what about you? Anything that stands out in the production?
As a person who works in production, I gotta say, a lot of green screen VFX. That's one thing for sure of the Thor 4 film. With the undead, dark shadow type of people, dope concept. It felt like he was some type of necromancer. I think that's what it's called. Pretty cool concept, but overall, it's like they hold up their own, but the kids was a MacGuffin, or Thor hammer was a MacGuffin to open the Bifrost. Overall, with the music at choices, sometimes was weird. The choices of the 80s song they chose to have in the background narrative was a bit weird choice to me overall. The sound design was solid to me. I do want to say that it kept being consistent overall throughout the theater. But again, like the problem to me was more of the script itself. Like this felt like, when you watch a 12 episode anime or 12 episode type of series, but then they greenlit it from 12 episode to 26 episode the next season. This is what it felt like. Thor: Love and Thunder felt like it could have been in 1 hour type of movie, example. But then they say, you know what? Let's put in this fluff and make it to 2 hours flat. I'm like, why do we need to do that? Because I want to make money. I'm like, okay, cool. That's what I felt like with this film. Like they added too much fluff, which we didn't need. We needed other stuff that we wanted, but we never got.
Or
So
they may
like,
have, instead of adding, they may have cut important things. There have been rumors going around that, and there's nothing to substantiate this, but Bob Chapek may have come down and said, like, this movie needs to be 2 hours long. Like, if it's 2 hours long, we can play it that many more times in each theater. And like you said, Vash, make that much more money.
I hated how the producers would literally say, oh, 2 hours, so I can make my bread. I'm like, how about just make a good film? So I think about money. Yes, we know. But if you have a good film, you will make money the way people come and watch a second viewing, third viewing, or 126 that people watch Spider-Man No Way Home that has a whole type of world record. Like me, who is an MCU, not stan, just a fan, who enjoys good or bad, great or not or worse, but still will go to watch a second or third time if it's good. This is the first film that I told myself, literally said the words out loud, I can't wait to watch the film again on Disney Plus. I'm like, that's not saying it's sad to say it, but it's sad to actually believe it, knowing that I don't care about Thor 4. It just,
Dude, Avengers Endgame is 3 hours long, and it's the second highest grossing film of all time.
Exactly.
And it's in your same franchise.
So runtime isn't the problem with this movie. The problem with this movie are the things that Taika decided to include. And like I said in my general thoughts, there was a lot of stuff that I think should have been ripped out completely in like, and there's other stuff. And I'll get into it when we talk about gore and Omnipotent City and all of that stuff. So for me, when it comes to the production stuff, I thought there was some really good moments with the cinematography. Like you, Chris, the color palette stuff, that was some of the best stuff in the whole movie. Them being on top of that moon in black and white and what it symbolizes. You're in a realm devoid of light.
Do they call it the Shadow Realm in the movie?
Yes. Yeah. So they're in, well, I don't think they call the moon the Shadow Realm, is it? Or is it?
I can't remember. I've only seen it once. I'm sorry.
I can't remember now. But I think it's the Shadow Realm. I think you're right. But I love that we're in this area that's completely void of light, and Gore commands these shadow creatures versus, Thor. It's very colorful. The Bifrost is literally the Rainbow Bridge color versus, light and dark. I love the differences between those two. I thought the set design for a couple of different things were pretty good. As much as I'm not the biggest fan of what they did with New Asgard, I do think that the sets looked good. Like Vash, there's a lot of like green screen and blue screen stuff that I don't think looked that great. It's very telling what's green screen and what's the volume because of how different they look.
Yeah.
So that was kind of jarring for me, where there's some things that look great and then other things that kind of looks shitty. Some things are really colorful, and then some things that should be colorful are not. Like, I don't think Omnipotent City was that vibrant compared to what I thought it should be.
I agree.
I thought it was pretty matte, even though we got some gold and some other colors. I thought it was pretty matte for what the rest of the film does. You know what I mean?
It's a very flat, just all gold around. I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna have any white, any blue, any green, like any colors, like just gold.
Yeah, but I loved Eternity. I loved the Shadow Realm. I loved how the opening sequence looked with like the shrine, the huge building and everything. Like all of that stuff looked great. You know, but again, like we've all talked about, there's just elements of the story that just isn't working. So let's get into those elements. Let's get into the character breakdown portion. Well, we'll be able to break down a lot of this fucking film. So the order that I picked is kind of like a mixture of like screen time and like relevance, right? So let's start off with Sif. I'll start it off real quick. So I was very excited to see Jamie Alexander back. I love her as Sif. As a matter of fact, she was the actress that I personally wanted to play Wonder Woman. I'm glad that it went to Gal. Gal's amazing, but I think Jamie Alexander would have been phenomenal, right?
Yeah, she would have been great too.
Yeah, in another universe, she would have been great. It was great to see her again. But when we see her, she's on this planet with the giant god that was killed. We don't fucking see it. Which is another problem, and this is going to be a running theme in this film. We don't see it happening. We literally see like some video footage of Sif just talking about the God Butcher killing everyone.
Yeah.
And then she's like kind of on her deathbed just sitting there talking about wanting to go to Valhalla. And then it's just played off like a fucking joke, bro. Like soldiers died, gods died, and we're just playing it for a joke. Right? And this is where this film starts to feel like Guardians Volume 2 for me. I don't hate it anymore, but I'm not a fan of Guardians Volume 2. I think
this movie's like knocked it up in your ranking.
It has.
For sure.
I think there's just moments that should be serious and is just played off as a fucking joke. Sif being one of many moments in this movie where it should have been serious, where we see this god that was a friend of Thor's. We're literally watching his body disintegrate, heading to whatever afterlife it's heading to. And again, it's just played as a fucking joke. Sif is, well, she wasn't actually dying, but she could have been dying, talking about going to Valhalla, the afterlife, the ultimate end for a Viking warrior. And it's just a fucking joke. And then at the end of the movie, she's trading Axel Heimdall's son. And it's like, sure, cool. That's awesome for like future movies or like, you know, future TV shows. But we haven't seen Sif in years, bro. We've seen The Warriors 3. And real quick, I absolutely despise the way that this film disrespected The Warriors 3. You know, Korg is at the beginning. He's doing, and I'll get into that when I'm talking about Korg.
This guy, and this guy, and this guy.
Yeah, I'm like, they died protecting the fucking gate to Asgard, and they're a joke?
Taika doesn't care about that, man.
We haven't seen Sif since what, Dark World? We haven't seen Sif since Dark World, almost 10 years ago. Yeah. And then you bring her back, and she's... Loki, right. And she's a fucking joke, bro. That really pissed me off. So, Chris, tossing it to you first. What did you think about Sif in this movie? Positives and negatives, whatever you have.
I agree with you. The character relationship between Thor and Sif, it's just not here in this film. You know, they've had such a long relationship. She's in love with him, you know, and has been in love with him for, I can only assume, centuries, since they're gods. And he knows that, you know, and yet Jamie Alexander really only came back so they could have a silly joke about her arm going to Valhalla because it was lost in battle. And again, this is just one of those things that I think is totally unbalanced, you know, like I'm going to admit I laughed out loud at that joke in the theater, but like, after I got out of the movie and after the ride was finished, you start to kind of critique the ride a little bit, and you're like, well, that wasn't so great, you know? I just think it disrespected her character. And, you know, general audiences don't give a fuck about Lady Sif. You know, they probably don't even remember that she was in Dark World or the first movie at all, you know? So this movie's working really well for general audiences. I've heard that, like, most people who aren't super ingrained in the Marvel Cinematic Universe like we are and like our viewers are, really dig this flick. But yeah, it just, like you, James, it just really isn't working for me. They do show her at the end of the movie, like you said, training Axel and doing training with Valkyrie. Like I would have loved to see like Valkyrie and Sif get together. That would have been great. Like she finally finds love. It's called Thor Love and Thunder, love for everybody, right? But we don't even get that. So
Yeah, it would have been nice.
So, like, to James' point, how he said it was a joke, like everything in this movie they made into a fucking joke, and I hated it. At the very first opening scene, Christian Bale is acting his ass off, and then the god is like doing these like his just weird like thing with his head. His eyes are getting big. What do you want? It's like, bro, just for 5 minutes, just let it be serious. Like this is a serious moment. The guy can still be an asshole without making it into like this goofy banter joke. And I just, it was like every little thing. And like JV said, everything was a joke with Sif. Oh, you can't die right here. You can only die in battle because if not, let's make a joke out of this. And it's just
shit.
And it's not even consistent because Jane doesn't die in battle. She dies from cancer, but somehow she's in Valhalla. But you know what I'm saying? It doesn't even.
She dies from cancer in battle.
Because she was Mighty Thor while fighting Gore.
Yes, correct. Like she technically died in battle still because the battle ended while they enter the end of the world thing. So she died in battle with cancer technically beating her first within the battle. So technically she was in the loophole of battle.
Feels like a save that you guys are trying to do.
Or what? Oh man, who said this? It may have been Mark Bernardin on the Fat Man Beyond podcast, but he like framed it in a way, and I'm sorry if it's not him and somebody else online that said this, but he framed it in a way like she went to Valhalla because of losing to her battle with cancer, which I also think is like really well written.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great way to kind of frame that moment. It's not spoken or implied even in the film, but like in terms of headcanon, if that's what you want to do to like justify Jane going to Valhalla, I think that's fantastic headcanon, but the movie doesn't do any work to get us there. So
yeah, like I don't know, but like back to the main point, Sif was underused. It just felt like it was just a joke. And it's like we saw her a little bit in Loki. So it was like, oh, okay, we're going to get to see her again. And maybe they're going to give us something. And like JB said, it's off screen that Gore has just fucked everybody up. And it's like, this guy is Gore the God Butcher for a reason. And yeah, we'll get to all of that later. Go ahead to the next one.
Hey, me. I'm still missing. I'm about to say I haven't given my thoughts on the latest Sif.
You're the next one.
Latest Sif, man. Sad. The show that everyone hates, Agents of Shield. They gave more respect to her. I think in 3 episodes she only appeared in Agents of Shield. I think in season 1 and 2.
I don't know what you're talking about, Vash. That show doesn't exist. I've never heard of that in my life.
Yeah, but you know what? They give more respect to a character that just got shade after shade, and like. The Warrior 3, like when our boy Korg was just throwing the cliff notes of Thor and his adventures, is like, how do you just disrespect the Warrior 3 in the comics? There are the Warrior 3, the ones that fight with Thor in battle, to die in Valhalla and everything, and all that. But in the movie, they just a chopped liver. They literally say, oh, there and there. No. Call them by their fucking name, you piece of shit. Like, how do you just treat them and not even say a name to give them respect? Like, and Thor himself don't even like, no, Corey, you gotta give them right. They're the ones that fought. Like, but you give more respect to Bruce Banner, who you just literally met less than 10, 15 years ago. But Warrior 3, you've been fighting with them for what, 200, 300 years? And like, it's just sad that like Chris said, the joke aside, it was funny when Thor said, your arm went to Valhalla, but the rest of you're still alive. So technically you might not go to Valhalla. Jokes aside, it was funny. Arm. But then after that, like, are we not gonna get serious though? Like, literally, girls literally just lost a whole arm, and you're not gonna talk about that. And Valkyrie, who is the king of the king of Asgard, she literally got another warrior back, which is Lady Sif. But you don't go like, we didn't see no screen time with the king Valkyrie and Lady Sif once. We didn't get no type of relationship with them two. Like, hey, nice to see you. Do you want to get back to the battlefield? Nothing. Like, hey, it's nice to have a sister back from here. Back from battle. How do you feel to train again? Can you still fight with one arm or something? But no. So like, and I'd rather not move on yet. I mean, like, I'd rather hold my thoughts for the other stuff, but I feel bad for Lady Sif. I'm glad she's still alive to some extent, but is she really that important? Because the MCU treats her like they're nobodies, even though they've been fighting with Thor for so long.
At least she got paid. At least Jamie Alexander got some money.
Right.
There's a silver lining.
True.
That's been one of my biggest issues. Like, there's just no love for the Warriors 3 or Sif. They've just been disrespected. And again, they gave up their lives protecting Asgard from Hela. It's just like, yeah, that guy, whoever that guy is. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me, bro? Like, this is ridiculous. But the only thing I would give you pushback on, Steve, and we kind of touched on this before we went live, the gods are supposed to be pieces of shit. They're supposed to be assholes. Like, they are gods, so little, like, human issues are nothing to them. So them, like, making jokes and, like, not caring and only caring about orgies and shit, I'm okay with that, because it only plays more into the fact that, into Gore's, like, need to kill all of the gods and why he doesn't feel like they're worth worshipping. So that's the only pushback I would give, but it's just like, I'm with you. Some of the jokes don't work for me, and I'll get to that once we talk about Omnipotent City. But let's talk about Valkyrie real quick. So for me, there's a lot that I liked about Valkyrie, and a lot of missed opportunities I think were there as well. I liked the exploration of Valkyrie's need to get back on the battlefield, like we mentioned before. You know, she's proud to be king of New Asgard, but she wants to get back to the battlefield. So I liked that. I love the relationship between her and Jane. You know, she lost all of her sisters before, and she's been looking for that sisterhood again, and she has that with Jane. So I love that. I love watching them play off of each other and fight off of each other. I thought that was really, really cool. Again, love that she's hungry for battle. I love the friendship that she has with Thor. Right, I love the differences between the two and how they work together. I love watching her fight against Gore. That was one of the things that I really liked. We got to see Valkyrie kill a bunch of gods. We got to see Valkyrie literally go 1v1 with Gore, and you know, she fought off with some of the shadow creatures. I thought that was dope. A negative that I have though is taking Valkyrie out of the third act fight in place of the children of Asgard. And I'll get into that a little bit more once we talk about the kids. But I think removing Valkyrie, who you set up in the film as being someone hungry to get back on the battlefield, you rip her away from the most pivotal moment of the film? Okay, stupid fucking decision, just so that we can have some fucking kids with laser eye bunnies, plush toys. Anyways, we'll get back to that. But I love Valkyrie. I love Tessa Thompson. I just wish that the script gave her more to do, especially in the third act. That kind of pissed me off, that we kind of just wrote her out, and then she shows back up at the end and she's training the kids of Asgard to be warriors. Valkyrie belonged in that final battle. I also believe that Sif belonged in that final battle. I think it would have been amazing to watch Thor, Mighty Thor, Lady Sif, and King Valkyrie all standing up to Gore and the shadow monsters. I think that's what the third act should have been. Taika completely dropped the ball, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. Like I said, Chris, tossing it to you again. What were your thoughts on Valkyrie in this film?
I agree with most everything that you said. I'm not I don't totally agree with like swapping out the kids at the end for King Valkyrie. I think you probably could have had both. I do actually like the kids getting the power of Thor and like being involved with the fight at the end, but I think you're right in that to send Thor off to that battle by himself, I think Valkyrie should have been a part of that. Sif should have been a part of that. I think you could have had all of them, but yeah, I think she's underutilized here. That, like we said before, like you said before specifically, like there are a lot of excellent ideas in this movie, but they're just not executed to the best of their ability or to the fullest. You know, having her be kind of like a apathetic leader. You know, she's tired of the politics of being king, wanting to get back to the battlefield. All that stuff is super interesting. The movie just doesn't really care once it presents that to us. It's like, well, you know, it's not like the most important thing we're doing here, so it can kind of just fall by the wayside. So yeah, I agree with you. She's underutilized in the film.
Yes.
Steve?
She's underutilized. She's stuck being the king of a theme park. And she fucking hates it apparently. Like like you said, they play on it so much of she's going to be like getting back into battle and she's ready for it and all this other stuff. And I guess they try to give us a little tease of it in Omnipotent City and then the first fight. But it's just like I don't feel like it's enough. Even with her wanting to get into battle, when we're at Asgard, I don't feel like we got enough of her in that fight against the Shadows. I feel like they gave us a little Jane, they gave us Thor, and then it was like more so of like, oh, I'm seeing Jane again, and my eyes are, you know, my eyes are only focused on her. I love her, and then this obsession with, you know, Mjolnir and stuff like that, where they could have given us good fight sequences with Valkyrie and some of the Shadows, and some of the other stuff. They were so busy trying to give us bullshit in a sense that they could have given us better moments, and especially with Valkyrie. And then at the very end, like like JB said, Thor goes alone, and that's one thing that bothered me. If Thor's gonna go fight Gore alone, let him fight him alone. Having Jane come to save the day, that kind of felt weird because then you would think Valkyrie would also show up. You know what I'm saying? Something like that where everybody comes, or just let him fight alone and he summons Mjolnir, and now he's got, you know, uh, the Stormbreaker and Mjolnir at the same time, and he's doing like a dual fight. Something like that. Maybe that could work. But having Jane come save him and save the day kind of felt kind of weird to me, as far as that final fight without having Valkyrie in there.
Vash, what about you? What are your thoughts on Valkyrie?
Girl, kill. I want you to kill people. I want you to kill Gore. If anything, kill the kids too. F it. You know, fuck them kids.
Order 66.
Let's
Oh
go.
my God.
Nah, but jokes aside, Steve and Chris hit on the nail. Valkyrie should have been more useless. Like, she's literally the king of Asgard, and she's literally the CEO of this new world. Girl said, I want to be back on the field. I want to be back on be back on the battlefield. Jane, I need you. You're my only woman for us to work together, fight together. They only fought in Ominopus in the God City. I'm not going to try to pronounce it and say it wrong. So in the God City, they only fought there, and then they fought Gore, where Valkyrie was wearing the thunder. Using Thunder, which is the actual name of the actual Thunder.
Yes, Thunderbolt
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Thunderbolt, which is very on the nose. It was dope to see her use it, fight with it. We never, at the end of the movie, we never saw her if she kept it in her own closet or something. We just know that they still have it on their side. I'm like, all right, cool. But at the end of the day, it's like Valkyrie was more useful in Thor 3 Ragnarok, Here, she's just put in the back burner. Yes, this is not a Valkyrie film. This is a Chris Hemsworth playing Thor and Jane Foster as Mighty Thor. This is their film with Gore the God Butcher. But if you're gonna have a supporting cast of King of Asgard, played by Valkyrie, played by Tessa Thompson, use the film to the ability where you have this actress who's great and wants to be a fighter at work, but you're not really using her to the best of your ability. So it just makes you question like, is this even worth doing? Is this even worth watching? That's the part that's sad to say because Valkyrie, the actress, is beautiful. Girl does her stunts to the best of her knowledge, but for her in this film, girl just got a paycheck. I felt like she wasn't fully into it when her role was so underwhelming.
Yeah,
That's it.
I love Tessa Thompson so much, and again, the arc was there. It just wasn't executed the right way. And again, we'll get to it, but I think there's more things that should have been cut out in favor of giving her a little bit more story. Because you're right. I mean, the movie is supposed to be about Thor and Jane, right? But Valkyrie's a huge part of it too. She's king of Asgard. She's close friends with Thor and Jane. She's a huge part of this. There's more that could have been given to her, and it just wasn't. And I also hate that we get this really epic scene in one of the trailers where she's licking the blood off of her sword, which is fucking iconic. It was blowing up on the socials. It's not even in the fucking final cut, bro. It pissed me off, honestly, because I'm like, at least I can get this. Like, I'm so in love with Tessa Thompson, and watching her like lick the blood off the sword, I'm like, oh my god, marry me right now. But I just felt like there was just opportunities that were missed. So let's move on to Korg. And I have 0 positives for Korg. I don't think he was funny at all. I hated Korg being the narrator of this movie. I hated the narration of this movie in general. And I just wish Korg wasn't in it. Like, it just seemed like a better alternative. It's just like, yeah, Korg was off doing something else. He found a husband. He was off doing something else. I would have liked that instead, because he's just in here again as the narrator. He's just here for jokes. He literally does nothing. I think he throws like his weapon like once and he kills like a couple gods, but that's it. Like, Korg is absolutely fucking useless in this movie. So Chris, tossing it to you, what are your thoughts on Korg in this movie?
I sound like a broken fucking record. I agree with you. I don't think Korg's necessary in this movie. I do not like his voiceover. You know, I've said many times on my podcast, and this isn't a flat rule, but like, voiceover to me is kind of one of the weakest ways to present narrative in a film. You know, show us. This is, I'm sure you guys have heard this before. Show, don't tell, right? And the way Korg's voiceover is used in the film, it's supposed to have this kind of emotional payoff by the end of the movie, where he's almost repeating what he said at the beginning of the film, except now he's talking about Jane Foster, Mighty Thor, and we're shown this like huge monument to her and her sacrifice in New Asgard. And I'm just not emotionally getting there. You know, it's not delivering the way Taika thinks it's delivering, for me at least, in that moment. And Taika loves putting himself in his movies. He's literally in every single one of his movies. There's a cameo of him somewhere. So like, Korg has to be somewhere in here, unless Taika's going to play somebody else. But Korg at this point has been in multiple MCU movies. So I agree with you, James, that like, maybe just like toss him in at a cameo in the beginning, have him doing something in the background on New Asgard. I mean, we see Meek like writing on a dry erase board, right?
Yeah.
Like, why can't we also see Korg doing some like menial task as well? He doesn't necessarily need to be part of the adventure, because he really, you could take him out and the movie would honestly be exactly the same.
Nothing changes.
Yeah.
I think what they are trying to do, because you get Luis and Ant-Man, and he's so fucking good at narrating in Ant-Man and kind of like giving that comedic goal. And I think that's what he was trying to do with Korg, and it failed miserably. And
Yeah, it's just not the same.
Yeah, Michael Pena really is like really putting on a show as he's telling the story in Ant-Man. And I feel like that's what he's trying to do. and you're just not Michael Pena. You're just not him, and it fails miserably, and it comes off like James said. It comes off disrespectful to there's this guy and this guy and another guy, and it's just like he's. It's what's funny is he's one of my favorite parts of Thor Ragnarok.
Preach.
Whereas, whereas in this one, it's just like it just feels like everything that they did in Thor Ragnarok, they were like, let's do that, but times 10 to every little thing that they did in this movie. And I felt like a lot of people was like, oh, this movie did really well, it made money. I'm like, well, one, people wanted to see it because it's Marvel, and two, they were going to see it off of the hype of Thor Ragnarok because Thor Ragnarok was so good. Of course, they're going to go see this. But this movie is not. It's not done well. It's really bad.
I will.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, Steve. I will say this about the Korg narrative, and that this movie is fucking absurdist, right? You know, we all think that it reaches absolutely ridiculous and absurd peaks. Presenting Korg as a narrative, you could potentially frame the movie as a story being told. I mean, it is framed as a story being told by Korg, who might not necessarily be the most reliable narrator. So, like, seeing Thor fly around on Stormbreaker like a fucking witch, which could just be like some flair that Korg is adding to the movie. So, like, I still don't think it should be in there, but like, Korg narrating the film could potentially speak to why this movie is so fucking crazy. Because it's not an accurate depiction of actual events that took place. It is merely the transforming or manipulation of what happened based on how Korg is recounting the events.
So what are we gonna get? Another movie? Like,
nope. This is what we got.
You know what I'm saying? It's just like this is.
I still don't like it. I don't know why I'm kind of fighting for it right now, but
I would rather them had gave us the real movie and then given us like one of those like shorts where Korg telling the story how they have them on Disney.
Oh yeah. Like the one shot James was talking about.
Yeah, like the little 15-minute, 20-minute thing or whatever, and just, you know what I'm saying? I'd rather you do that if that's how you want to do it, making the extremeness and all that. But no, this is really Korg was just like, why are you even here at this for most of the movie? Like, he didn't do anything that was worth anything. He was worthless. He was, and it's like, you would think like on New Asgard, when they had the first fight with the Shadows, they would have let him get some kind of like shine for a little bit, because they did show him fight a little bit, but they didn't give him like a little bit of shine. Like, they could have let him stand out a little bit and do something different, because honestly and truthfully, why do you have him in this movie if he hasn't developed from Thor Ragnarok? It's just, he's just another character, and there's no development on him. He's just here. And I get it, he's a side character, but to have him have so much time as far as like being on screen and like narrating his voice and stuff like that, that's cost money. The CGI and stuff, you could have given us more gore.
He's a full CGI character.
Yeah,
there isn't a single shot with him in it that isn't a visual effects shot.
Yeah, so all of that money and stuff and effort that you spend on that, you can actually show Gore kill another god. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you could have done, and we got Korg because he has to be in the movie. It's ridiculous.
Vash, what about you? Thoughts on Korg?
You're mute.
I know. I forgot I was on mute. I don't give a fuck about Korg. I'm gonna be straight up honest. In this movie, I didn't care. Like, in the beginning of the film, it was cute. Like, it was cute, the first type of narration. Like, hey kids, I'm gonna tell you a story of a Viking. This, that. He lost himself. You know, he went from a dad bod to this bod now. Awesome.
I do like that training montage.
Yeah, that montage was the best one. The rest, I didn't give two flying F about it. Like Korg, Taika, I know that's you in the mask. Korg said that he was gonna make a baby for 3 weeks, being inside a lava or something like that. At the end of the day, cool. Thank you for putting homage to some LGBTQ community. Pretty dope. But damn day, Corey, you wasn't in the battlefield. You didn't really do much. Meek looked like he did a lot more than you. He made a drawing plan. That's about it. Like, Corey, you're useless.
To speak to like, and maybe I'm probably not the right person to talk about this, but just to speak about like the LGBTQ representation in this film, you already have an LGBTQ character in Valkyrie. And like I said earlier, you could have easily paired her with Sif if Sif was a larger portion of this movie. Why does it have to be the giant rock monster? And I know that like representation overall, I guess, is important, but I feel like you already had a good character to represent, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it only works because you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's females in his race.
No, they're only males.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's how they reproduce anyway. So it's like it's fine. Like I don't care about that. It's just I wish Korg was actually useful. I wish he actually did something except make jokes and do dumb narration that wasn't needed in the film at all. Yeah. So let's move on to New Asgard. And I put this on here because I wanted to get your thoughts on what do you guys think on them making New Asgard, like Steve keeps saying, essentially a theme park. It's an attraction for tourists. One thing that I did like about it was getting to see more of Matt Damon, Sam Neill, and I forgot the other actor's name that plays Thor. I love those.
It's one of the Hemsworth brothers, I think.
Really, it's okay.
I think it's one of Chris Hemsworth's brothers. Yeah.
Oh no shit! Cool. I love those plays. They're fucking hilarious. I'm not a Melissa McCarthy fan, so when I saw her as Hela, I was like, oh fuck.
She's so funny as Hela though. Like just
oh fuck.
I did not expect that. It threw me out of it. Like, oh shit, is that Melissa? Wow.
She took me out, but
okay.
I'm not a fan of them turning New Asgard into a theme park. I'm not a fan of what's it called? Infinity Cones or whatever the fuck it's called.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is all dumb. Thanos killed more than half of your people. He killed half of the people in the universe. But yeah, let's make a joke about it and we'll make an ice cream shop dedicated to Thanos and the Infinity Stones snapping away people's lives. Let's make fun of that too. So it's like, it didn't really work for me. It doesn't really have a place in the film. I don't think it adds anything to the film. It doesn't do anything at all. So it's kind of a nothing thing to happen in the film for me. But Chris, tossing it to you again, what were your thoughts on New Asgard and all the upgrades that they've made?
I don't mind turning New Asgard into like a tourist attraction. I think there are a lot of great moments that come from doing that. Daryl from the Thor shorts is now officially canonized in the MCU because he's giving tours around New Asgard in those sequences. And I think it's a great way to bolster the economy. You know, I think it's smart if Valkyrie's like, well, you know, we're a bunch of Asgardians here on Earth. Look at this beautiful vista that New Asgard is on. People don't know a lot about Norse mythology or Asgardian culture. Like, we may be able to monetize this in some way, you know? So, like, in concept, I don't really mind it. However, I do absolutely despise the Infinity Cones joke. Because I agree with you that I think it's kind of super disrespectful to everybody that lost family members in the blip, Asgardians included. Thanos murdered 50% of the surviving Asgardians in Thor Ragnarok. Yeah. So it just, I don't know. I get it.
Then there was the snap, dude.
It's it's funny to the audience. It's one of those elements in a film where like it's funny on a meta contextual level, but if you're thinking about it in universe, it's poor taste, you know? So like it's really not there because it makes sense within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And granted, this whole movie says to me that Taika gives zero fucks about the continuity of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's his prerogative. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the Infinity Cones thing. But I think it's cool that they've kind of made New Asgard this tourist destination.
I hate it. And one of the another thing, the reason why I hate it is because like your protector Heimdall was like a huge piece in Asgard, huge, and you're joking about it, and his son Loki is right there. As we saw throughout the whole movie, his son is here. He knows, and it's just like I didn't like the play thing. I'm kind of over that now. Like, I guess they did it the last time and they were just like, oh, this worked out really good. Let's do it again. And it just I was like, whatever. And then not only did they touch on it, they gave him more lines later on. Oh, should we be making this into a play? We should do. And I was just like, bro, like, why are y'all doing this?
I laughed my ass off. I
I did too. I
laughed
love
my
seeing
ass
Matt.
off, bro.
I also don't know if it's actually supposed to be Matt Damon or if he's playing like someone else.
Some
You know,
person that's an actual Asgardian,
right?
which would be even wilder to me. It's just
Well, I guess
I
he
get
would
why you
have
don't
to
like
be.
it, though.
I guess he would have to be Asgardian because in Ragnarok he was on Asgard. So
yeah.
he would
Great
have
point.
to be like a story writer on
Unless
Asgard.
Loki abducted some humans to put on this sick
Maybe.
play, like,
And
and then
That's
he's
so
just
possible.
decided to stay around.
this is home now. Uh,
I mean,
But,
not to go off on a weird like tangent, but if you think about it, if he did actually abduct Matt Damon, and then the events of Ragnarok take place, Matt Damon's only way off of Asgard would have been to get onto the ship with everybody else. And by the time they land in New Asgard, maybe he just decides, you know, like who needs to go back to regular acting? They're asking me to put on shows every single day. They're paying me well. Like, I don't know. Headcanon. There you go.
yeah, Asgard is just, and then it's annoying because of everything that they went through in Ragnarok and everything like that, and then hearing like the lesson that they got with Odin was telling them Asgard is not a place, it's a people, and they made it feel like really, really like meaningful for them to turn around and turn it into a joke into this, where it's like a theme park and tourist attraction, and like people can just show up whenever. It's just kind of disappointing. It's like I can't believe y'all would do this to what y'all kind of had a great theme in the third movie as far as Asgard, because you it was more of lessons of looking into your inner self in a sense of you're not the god of hammers, you're the god of thunder, and Thor having to come to that realization of like I'm more than just this, and in Asgard it's more than just a place, it's people. You know what I'm saying? And then for that to turn around and turn into this is just like I didn't like it. I just was like, all right, whatever. I mean, it was a point where I didn't like it, but it didn't. I was so at this point in the movie, I just was like, this is just what it is, I guess. This is what it kind of felt. So it kind of now that we're talking about it, I'm like, oh, I don't like that at all. But as the movie was going on, I kind of was just like, all right, this is just what they're doing.
Yeah, for me, I guess the biggest thing is the Infinity Cones thing because I love what Caden just brought up. It's also a way for Asgard to be self-sustaining, right? I'm sure they make shit tons of revenue from tourist attractions. There were like 3 to 4 cruise ships in the harbor. So yeah, they're making bank. They're making money for their people, for New Asgard. So I fuck with that heavy, actually. But I think the main thing for me was just the Infinity Cones thing. It just rubbed me the wrong way, especially for what you said, Steve. Like, Thanos literally, with his own hands, murdered Heimdall, and we're just going to make a store glorifying Thanos and the Infinity Stones. Anyways.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
It's like, it's crazy. It's almost like going to a church and seeing like a shrine of the devil. It's like what are you doing? It's weird, but
And he's selling ice cream.
it's crazy. Like he should be their biggest enemy. And Thor
Hashtag
killed,
Mephisto confirmed.
yeah. Thor killed him with his bare hands, like all sorts of had to kill him twice low key and stuff like that. It's a lot, like for
You know,
for it to
Steve,
just
now
turn
that you point that out, in the last movie in Endgame, Thor was experiencing like a ton of trauma just hearing Thanos' name. And now he has to stare at this ice cream shop every time he like walks down Main Street.
It doesn't make sense. It's no, like JB said, no continuity at all. And when we get to Thor, that's something else I'll touch on because it's like, where's the development? There's no development to me for Thor in this
Yeah.
movie.
And like you said, Chris, like this is just one of those moments, and there's a lot of it in the film where it's just like, this would be funny for the audience. It doesn't really fit narratively, but audiences will get a kick out of it. They'll laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, sure, that works if you're making a standalone movie, but you're not, Taika, you know? But Vash, what about you? What are your thoughts on New Asgard?
New Asgard, dope. It's like the live version of Disney World or park cruise ships. Literally, they had like fucking like 3 or 4 cruise ships. Like, goddamn, where y'all going? Like, where you going to go from New Asgard to where else? But maybe if this film was 20 minutes or 50 minutes longer, and you had a chance to see the whole queen aspect of, king of Asgard, was her type of job description. I mean, why does she hate all these meetings? Are they every hour? What's going on? So like, I expected more for Asgard / Valkyrie, but I felt, for the word from Young Justice, I felt wow.
Just whelmed.
It's whatever. I can't wait till we get to the main character so I can try to like really pick this apart because this is bad.
Yeah. So let's continue here. Let's continue to. I wanted to talk about this next. So the children of Asgard.
Yuck.
Oh boy. So I liked Axel a little bit. I like the fact that he's Heimdall's son. I think it'll be interesting to see him. Excuse me. I think it'll be interesting to see him in future movies. But like, that's about it, man. I don't really know where it's gonna go with him. I don't know where it's supposed to go with the children of Asgard at all. Like, are we going to see them in future movies? Is there going to be like a future series where we're going to see them in battle? Like, I don't get it. So the kids, I wish all of this was completely ripped out of the film. I think the children of Asgard is the weakest point of this whole thing. I understand that Gore only took them so that, Thor can come and find him so that he can get Stormbreaker. But that could have been done without the kids. Some of the gods that Gore killed were friends of Thor's. So Thor's already going after Gore. We already know that Thor went to Omnipotent City to get help from Zeus. So they were going to meet regardless, right?
Yep.
So I think murdering gods, using that to get Thor's attention, that would achieve the exact same thing.
Exactly.
Like I mentioned before, I think the third act sequence with the kids is probably one of the worst things to ever happen to the MCU. I think the sequence it's lame, it's cheesy, it's absolutely fucking horrible. There's this close-up of the girl holding the bunny, and it's like shooting like yellow lightning out of its eyes, and she's fucking screaming. And I'm like, this is stupid. This is one of the dumbest things that the MCU has ever fucking done. One thing that I did think was cool, though, was when Thor is imbuing them with his power, when the lightning is going through all of them, it kind of looks like Idrisil, right? That they're all connected through his power. That was very nice symbolism.
That's pretty
right? Cool. But again, I think they're absolutely useless to the plot in every single way, shape, or form. I think you should have ripped them out, and instead of Gore just babysitting these kids, this is where Gore should have been killing other gods. All of the screen time we got with the kids should have been Gore going from planet to planet, wherever he needs to go, and we visually see him murdering gods.
Totally agree.
Like I said before, I think the kids should be gone, and at the end it should have been Sif Mighty Thor, Valkyrie, and Sif, bro. That should have been the four, the three of them fighting the shadow demons, and then Thor fighting against Gore, right? And then Mighty Thor could have done the same thing, where Thor is using the bolts to hold a sword, and then Mighty Thor throws Mjolnir to break it, and then the same thing happens, right? So
Yeah.
it's just like, for me, the kids didn't work at all. I don't think that there's anything about the kids that progresses Thor's storyline in the film or anyone else's storyline. I think they could be ripped out, nothing changes. And what actually would change when we would get actual screen time of the things that we actually came to see, like Gore butchering gods. So I'll stop rambling and I'll pass it to you, Chris. What are your thoughts on the Children of Asgard?
I couldn't say it any better than you did, James. I completely agree with you that they could totally be supplanted by Gore just leaving a murderous trail of gods, you know? It seems, oh man, I don't want to be this guy, but I'm gonna say it, and that it kind of seems a little bit like nepotism, where the children are just a really fun way to get cast and crew's children into the movie. Because I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but all the kids were either children of the crew or Natalie Portman's kids or Taika's kids. Love at the end of the movie is played by Chris Hemsworth's daughter. So all those kids are like related to people that worked on the movie. And yeah, I agree with you. They don't impact the theme of the film in any way or the themes of the film in any way. You could absolutely replace them and add something that would strengthen the overall narrative of the film. So yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you.
It's like Sif didn't call Thor and say, "Hey, there's a guy named Gore the God Butcher that's murdering gods," and that was the, "Hey, I need to show up." You know what I'm saying? Like, that's your showing up. You show up to Asgard, then you see the shadows come and do all the record. They could have had Gore destroy Asgard, and then he doesn't actually kill Thor if you want to go that route, and then he just goes off to another place. But still, you just destroyed Asgard. I have to go get you. You know what I'm saying? Like, there could have been anything. It didn't have to be kidnap the kids and
yeah, his motivation could have been anything else.
anything, absolutely anything. And it's just the kids just, the thing that bothered me the most, I'll say this, and I don't know if this is the kids or Gore or however, Heimdall's son had that power to put Thor in the cage with them, even as like a hologram, even if it's just a hologram. He can see them and they can see him, right? Gore the God Butcher shows up in that cage. How did they miss each other? Gore and Thor never interact. Like, once he pops up with the hologram, Gore should have showed up and been like, at least like some dialogue between the two, because they don't even have very much dialogue with each other.
It's true.
Or they don't. So that could have been a situation where, because one of the huge things that I loved about Gore in the comics was his dialogue. He was dropping a lot of gems and things like that. That would have been a good point to have Thor and Gore interact with each other. What's the point of making him a hologram to talk to the kids and being like, it's gonna be all right? Like, what? Why? You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't get that point. And it was like, you could have easily had, that could have been a situation where Gore sees it and says something crazy to him, or Thor, you know what I'm saying? Any kind of banter between those two. I thought that was kind of weird, and it made no sense, because literally in the next scene, Gore is in the cage with them, telling them a spooky story or whatever. I just didn't understand that at all. Other than Heimdall, the other kids, like JB said, are not needed. If they decided to make it where Gore only kidnaps Heimdall's kid, that could still work. Instead of kidnapping all the kids, it could just be that one kid. Oh, shoot, Heimdall is my best friend. I gotta go save his son. That could have been it. And because Heimdall seemed to be the only one that had Heimdall's son, was it Axel? What's his name?
Yeah.
Axel's the only one that seemed to have significance out of all those kids because he's gonna be the new bridge. You know what I'm saying? So that could have been the only one that you used instead of having all those other kids. It just was one of those weird things, and it turned the whole movie into a babysitter movie to me because like you have that going on, and then like I said at the very end, Thor now with Gore's daughter, and it's just a whole like babysitting type thing, movie thing going on. I just thought it was pointless to have all those kids in it.
Yeah, man. Like I hear you. I just wish they were all gone. Like they just don't do anything for me. And like the film could have still been 2 hours, but cut them out and then just use that time for Gore to be killing gods. We're gonna get to the Zeus section, and we're also gonna talk about Omnipotent City at the same time. But just like real quick, just like one of the biggest things that bummed me out was not having Gore literally roll up into Omnipotent City, kill a bunch of gods. Can you realize like what that would do for the narrative? You would have Gore killing gods in Omnipotent City. It would show how fearless he is, that he would roll up in the golden city of the gods to
And
murder
murder
them. And then it would also be beneficial to show how powerful he is by having the gods run away from him.
Yeah.
It would also show how brave Thor, Valkyrie, and Mighty Thor are for staying to fight him.
As the other gods are that
As
whole
the other
thing,
gods are running for their lives. This is
Bro.
what I'm talking about. Like,
that
Well,
entire scene was crazy because I just knew that was the purpose of going to Omnipotent City. I when I saw Russell Crowe was going to be Zeus, I said, "Oh, you're just there to die."
oh, dude,
Because-
yeah.
You're
I thought
just
the same thing.
die.
I was like,
Like-
dude, the first 15 minutes, well, not 15, like maybe like the first 30 minutes would be Gore getting the sword. The sword, we get the backstory from him. But then he rolls up in Omnipotent City and fucking murders the gods, bro.
Bro.
And then it's like, oh shit, how are we supposed to stop this guy? You know what I mean? Like,
Zeus even talks about in that scene how, he kind of whispers it to Thor because he doesn't want to cause a panic, but he talks about how like afraid he is of Gore, how afraid they should be of Gore.
like you said, show, don't
Right.
tell. Show me Zeus, the god of the gods, terrified of Gore, literally walking into his golden kingdom and fucking murdering gods right in front of him without a care in the world. Do you understand what that would do to the weight of the film?
But
To
instead,
put Gore on this pedestal.
our
Question,
heroes
do you
murder a
think-
ton of gods and then they
Do-
leave.
Do you guys think we didn't see that version of Gore's because
Mighty Thor and Korg kill more gods than Gore in the fucking movie.
What's even worse about this whole thing is that you could have cut out that fight scene at the fucking beginning of Thor and the Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, there was nothing wrong. It was fun, but like you could have cut that whole scene out and then given us a Gore, the God Butcher, butchering gods. They could have started this movie off with the Gore scene, with him getting his sword and he becoming the butcher and everything like that. And then the next scene could have just literally been the Guardians of the Galaxy getting on the plane and leaving. You could have cut that whole scene out and given us a fight with Gore the God Butcher and some guys.
So that I'm okay with because of the parallels. And again, this is another problem with the film. The missed opportunity is not focusing more on the parallels between Thor, Mighty Thor, and Gore. I love that it starts off on this really, really low, sad, fucked up note, and then it switches to Thor trying to do all of these different things to get out of his headspace of depression. Right? I love the duality. That should have been the movie back and forth. The devastation and sadness from Gore, and then everything that we get from Thor, Jane, Valkyrie, and everyone else. That should have been the duality of the film. But Vash, tossing it to you, what were your thoughts on the Children of Asgard before we move into Zeus?
for the Children of Asgard, as my original nickname was Rabbit Bugs Bunny, it was cute to see the little girl which is still questionable. Just to use a little girl Bugs Bunny or rabbit type of stuff, animal, and literally shoot lightning from his eyes. I'm like, that makes no logical sense, but sure, we're gonna go with it. A bunny could shoot lightning off his eyes. Stuffed animal somehow. The kid, fuck them kids, because the only one I care about was Idris Elba, son in the film. I forgot the character name.
Axel.
Axel, thank you, because he wants to play homage to the '80s band. I forgot what was the name of the '80s band.
Guns N' Roses.
Thank you, Guns N' Roses. Totally cool character. He has the eyes of his father. Lady Sif is training him for what? Don't know. Is he gonna join the Young Avengers? Who knows? But it's like the kids weren't really needed, because every time we saw the kids, Thor was like, "Hey kids, I'm just here to cheer you up, make jokes. I'm here to help you guys out. I'm not to make myself look stupid." Oh, but instead, can we just see the kids? Maybe one of the kids got killed or something. Bring the stakes. Maybe put the stick on a fork. Cut off the kid's head. Show Thor that you're serious about this. You're not here just to be a villain. It's like, come on. So,
they're definitely not going to cut off a child's head in a Disney film.
Yeah, they're not gonna.
I know. You can only hope for a couple things, but overall, like, I was happy. I will tell you this. I was happy when Thor threw the thunderbolt to Zeus, pierced him in, and I was like, yes, let's go. Let's go for some killing. We didn't get much killing.
That should have been the Butcher's role.
Agreed.
Not Thor. To attempt to kill him, because in the end we find out he's not even fucking.
How fucking sick would that have been if Gore thrusted the Necro Sword that kills all of the other gods through the chest of Zeus, and then for him to survive that by the end, to show how powerful Zeus is compared to the other gods. Yeah. Like, there's just so many missed opportunities, man. Like, it's absolutely fucking ridiculous.
To be honest,
would have been cool.
The way that this movie is done, as far as like how it's just like they want to make it comedic and everything like that, I would have made the villain Hercules and then save Gore for another movie, because what it looks like is Hercules is going to be the next villain for Thor. I would have used him for this movie. If you're going to make it this comedic and stuff like that, Hercules kind of fits that role, because he's quote unquote a god, so he's got the kind of attitude. I would have used that for that, and I would have used Gore for another movie, because from what we got out of this, I feel like they literally wasted Gore in this movie. Like, it's
facts. I agree with you. I feel like Christian Bale could have done a lot more with his character or role. We could have seen more.
Save it for the Gore portion, because there's a lot that I want to say about that too.
I was just saying it because I just text you saying that I am gonna dip.
Cool.
Peace out, Vash.
Later, bro.
I'll see you guys.
All right, man.
Yeah, so I am going to kick it off, and we're going to talk about Zeus in this movie. Mm-hmm. So I thought the way that Russell Crowe played Zeus was great. I loved it, because like we talked about before, the gods are supposed to be douchebag pieces of shit.
Yeah.
Right? All they care about, again, is their orgies. And he was even talking about the competition for, what was it? The competition to see how many people were killed in the name of a god. Right. They're supposed to be the worst beings ever. So Russell Crowe plays it to perfection. Zeus is the god of gods. He's an absolute fucking douchebag. No one can talk through his little intro where he comes in with like the lightning and the clouds and everything. No one can say anything. So like, I thought he did an amazing job with that part. The only thing that I didn't like is, again, this is where it gets a little too comedic. It's like he steps from behind his podium and like he holds his skirt and goes down the stairs in front of Thor. I was like, Taika, what in the actual fuck are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen like interviews and I've heard things that was all Russell Crowe's idea, but it's just like,
You're the
maybe
director.
not.
I mean,
maybe,
you're tossing him into a skirt. He's gonna play with it.
Yeah, sure, but it's just like, dude, it was so cringy and it bugged the shit out of me. But he definitely played his role as the ultimate douchebag of douchebags. So, Chris, starting with you, what were your thoughts on Russell Crowe's interpretation of Zeus?
I think he's a great representation of Zeus from actual Greek mythology. Like you said, in traditional Greek mythology, Zeus is a womanizer and a piece of shit, and he doesn't care about humans. He turns himself into random animals to like fuck random human women. And I think they are capturing the essence of the real Zeus from mythology very well in this sequence. So yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to say about Zeus. Like I could take it or leave it. You know, there were some scenes that were cut with, I think, what's her name, Lena Headey from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, Lena Headey. Yeah, she was supposed to be in this.
She was supposed to be Hera, his wife.
Yeah, right.
And
yeah,
from mythology, like she's just totally fed up with Zeus, you know, because of how promiscuous he is. So I think if you had left her in the film and we could have seen that dynamic as well, it would have strengthened him as a character even more so. But again, like we've mentioned before, all the stuff in, oh my God, why can't I remember this name? Omnipotent City, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Is just kind of a waste.
Once again, I feel like maybe I'm being super critical of it because this was my number 2 and I was super excited about it. I know he's supposed to be a pompous act. Like maybe I'm spoiled by The Boys because they play that role, but still it's not as goofy and animated as this movie was. And I feel like it was super, super like the dress and the skirt thing and kind of walking down the stairs. There was a couple of times where I looked at my homeboy and I just shook my head as this scene was going on. And then he does the whoosh and then Chris Hemsworth loses all his clothes and it's like, for what? Like, it was just one of those things. Yeah, it's one of those things where you could tell like Chris Hemsworth and Taki were like, oh, we're going to make sure that we show off us and make sure that we get all the love and thunder, if you will, of this like movie, because like I just didn't understand some of those parts. And for him and his character, I get it that they're supposed to be like the top of the food chain and they are pompous and stuff like that. But I feel like they could have mellowed it out a little bit. It doesn't have to be crazy goofy the entire movie. And it just felt that way for every single scene. It was like, we have to make it a little bit more, a little bit extra. I think Russell Crowe did a good job because this is the script that he's given. And this is the character that he's given. So he's like, this is what I need to do. But they could have tamed it a little bit more. That's one of my only gripes with this whole thing with the gods. I get that they're supposed to be that way, but I guess maybe, like I said, maybe I'm spoiled by Homelander and The Boys and things of that nature, of how they know that they're the top of the food chain, but there's still a way that they're carrying themselves in a kind of tone. And I feel like they could have done that in this movie and portrayed it well.
I honestly think that everything that you're saying, Steve, would have been fixed had we seen Gore kill more gods on screen. Because what it would have done is it would have kind of balanced the pendulums in terms of, you know, action, violence, drama, whatever you want to call it, and then all the comedy that's taking place with the gods. You know, because Gore, over the course of the film, is making some very good points about why all the gods should die, you know? But, well, James wants to talk about Gore, so I'll talk about him when we get there. But I honestly think everything you're saying could have been fixed if the scales were readjusted.
Facts. Like, there's just a lot of restructuring And you can tell there's a cut of this movie somewhere that's awesome, you know, but we're never going to see it. But so we've already been talking about it briefly. So let's keep talking about Omnipotent City just real quick. I only put it on here because I loved getting to see the Golden City itself. It was amazing to see all of the different gods. Like I mentioned before, we got to see Korg's god. I can't remember what his name. We got to see Bastet. We also got to see Celestials in this. There's so many different gods that you get to see, and I think that's one of the only reasons to rewatch certain sequences in this movie is to just like go to Omnipotent City and try to pick out like which gods you know. Like there's just so many out there, and I thought that was really, really fucking cool for them to show us all of the different gods. And that's something that I think the MCU has been doing really well recently, is showing all of the different planes of existence, the astral plane.
Yeah.
You know, getting to see the astral plane in Moon Knight, the Egyptian afterlife, getting all of the different afterlives, getting the different gods, the Egyptian gods, the Greek gods, the African gods, the all of it, right? So that's one thing that I really liked about Omnipotent City. It is this hub where all of the gods can come together. So I thought that was really fucking cool. So Chris, what about you? What do you think about Omnipotent City and getting to see all of the different gods?
No, I dig that too. I like that the MCU's kind of been building up this cosmology over the course of the last few TV shows and films. But overall, the sequence, what's it for? What is the sequence for other than to get Zeus's Thunderbolt? You know, I just think it's kind of a waste of time.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I was looking forward to it because, like I thought that we were going to see some murder and stuff. But then even Thor, oh, this is my hero, Zeus, and all this other stuff. And then to find out that Zeus is not who he thought he was and stuff like that, I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I thought even as they're slaughtering the gods and stuff, I thought that there would be more of a fight. It was more so of just them butchering the god, you know what I'm saying, themselves. And it was just like, what is the purpose, like you said, of going to this city and showing the city off other than to get this lightning bolt from Zeus, which, I mean, it ended up being helpful. And I thought, oh, okay, this is Valkyrie's weapon, because they originally gave it to Valkyrie. Valkyrie wants to get back into the fight. Oh, okay, Valkyrie gets an upgrade. And then later on, you only give it to Thor, and it's like, it was kind of weird. It was one of those things where it was like, okay, so we're passing it around like a baton rather than giving a certain character an upgrade, things like that. So I don't know what I thought we were going to get out of that, but that's not what I thought we were going to get out of that entire scene.
I can see how there's like a part of Taika and a part of the screenwriters that are like, okay, this sequence is meant to kind of swing Thor closer to Gore's ideology, like to help Thor recognize that maybe Gore has a point, and like these people, these other gods that I looked up to are horrible. But I don't, is that ever paid off anywhere in the film? Even in the final moments of the film when he's having his discussion with Gore and like convincing him to choose love, I don't think it's ever really paid off effectively. So I don't know. It just seems like all the elements in this movie, and we've said this several times already, are just presented well but underutilized, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Chris. Like, that's something I was going to bring up when I talk about Gore and Thor. But like I mentioned earlier, this film should have been solely about the duality. Like you just said, this should have been the moment where Thor's like, maybe the rest of the gods are pieces of shit. Maybe Gore isn't wrong, but he's still going about it the wrong way. That's what this film should have been about. That should have been the duality between these characters. But again, another missed opportunity. So let's get into Gore. There's a lot of great things to say about Gore. Christian Bale is amazing. That opening
Fantastic.
scene is absolutely heartbreaking. He's walking through this desert planet. Like, the ground is so fucking dry, it's all cracked up and it's lifting off of the floor. And he's just praying all day, every day, just for water, for food, not for me, but for my daughter who praises you every day, drawing paintings of you every day. And then to watch him hold his daughter as she dies in his arms. It's absolutely heartbreaking. It's soul crushing. Listening to the Necrosword reaching out to him, praying on the fact that he's so broken, to make him the new wielder of the Necrosword, bringing him to a place where he would see his god, the sun god. I can't remember exactly what his name is, but to see him like he doesn't care. Gore tells him, all of your people are dead. There's no one left to worship you. And he's just like, yeah, there'll be more people. It'll be fine. There'll be more people in a couple hundred years. It'll be perfectly fine. And you understand where Gore is coming from. He lost his daughter. She died of thirst and starvation. His child. Again, it's absolutely heartbreaking. So the path that he chooses, you empathize with that. He's great. He's terrifying. He's funny. I love the scene where they're in the Shadow Realm and he's in the cage with the kids. And Axel is like telling stories about how Gore, like, you know, cut Thanos' head off. And then he takes this creature, rips its head off, throws it at the kids. He's like, what? You were laughing about it a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah, so
you know,
good.
so it's like, it's so terrifying, yet so haunting at the same time. Him hidden in the darkness and all you can see is like his white cloak and like the yellow of his eyes. There's brilliant moments with Gore in here. My only negative, again, he doesn't kill enough gods, and there's not enough gore. Christian Bale is killing it. Once he gets to the eternity, and he's talking about, like, what am I supposed to do? And Thor's telling him, choose love. Don't destroy all of the gods. Use your one wish to bring back your daughter. Your last wish, use that for love. That would have been the perfect cap on the duality between these characters. Gore only saw hate, where Thor was able to teach him to find love. That's what this movie should have been about. So many things to love about Gore. Chris, starting with you, what did you love about Gore?
Basically everything that you just said. I think, well, Christian Bale obviously is a phenomenal actor, and he's really leaning into the costume and the prosthetics and kind of chewing the scenery. And the only downside to this performance is that there isn't more of it. You know, you keep talking about the duality between Gore and Thor, but I think the true foil to Gore in this movie is Mighty Thor, because they're both experiencing the same thing. They're both wielding a weapon and a power that is killing them. The Mjolnir is killing Jane, is bringing her cancer back every single time she wields it. Gore is carrying out his mission with the Necro Sword, and he knows the deal he signed up for, and it's killing him the more that he uses it. So this idea of like choosing love, you know, when he's at eternity before he makes his wish, and Thor says like choose love, Gore says there's nobody. I'm dying. There's nobody to take care of her. Jane is the one that convinces him that there is someone. Thor will take care of her, you know? So I genuinely think Thor kind of takes a back seat here in this film, because it really is about Gore and Jane Foster and the journey that both of them are going on in parallel with one another. But yeah, I wish there was more of it. I just want more. I think there should be more Gore and more Jane Foster. When we reviewed it on Popaholics, I said, I think this movie could have done with an additional like 20 to 30 minutes, just tack on an extra 10 to 15 minutes of Jane Foster, flesh out her story a little bit more, tack on another 10 to 15 minutes of Gore, flesh out his story a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And it works a little bit better. But
Steve, what about you?
So I was super hype on Gore coming into this movie. I was hype on it. Christian Bale did wonderful. I feel like we could have gotten more out of the Necro Sword. If you guys know, Noel wields the Necro Sword first, and Noel literally like one-shots the Silver Surfer at one point. And it's like, if you know how strong the Silver Surfer is, then you can understand how powerful this sword is. And I don't feel like we got enough. I feel like we kind of got little tastes of it, where we only get to see the shadows like once or twice. I feel like, and there's more that he can do with that sword other than the shadows and things like that. So I really feel like we got underutilized with Gore the God Butcher. I feel like we should have gotten, like Chris said, we should have gotten way more. another 15 to 20 minutes, you know what I'm saying, of anything, even if it's just dialogue of just Christian Bale being awesome in this role, like because he just deserved it. He deserved more screen time, and we got some of the things that we gotten where I felt like they could have cut out on it with New Asgard, maybe some of that fight at the beginning. Like I said, I didn't really care for Guardians of the Galaxy at the beginning because if you were just gonna rush them out like out the door that quickly, could have done without that. You could have kind of done without, some of the sequences in Omnipotent City if you're not gonna have gore in there. There's a lot of things where I felt like you could have cut and then added more gore. And us not getting to see him butcher anybody and stuff like that really, really hurt. The things that like I said, I thought Christian Bale did really good at the method acting part. He was phenomenal. He deserved better. To be honest with you, there's not enough to say about that. Like, he definitely deserved better. I'm just really disappointed as far as this because I was super hyped for Go to God Butcher. I was texting everybody like, "You guys aren't ready," and all this other stuff. And what we got was just not a good representation of what that character actually is, honestly and truthfully.
How do you guys feel about them changing his design because Taika thought he would look too much like Voldemort, which is a valid concern. If you look at Gore, like there are elements of it, but I think
noseless.
Yeah, I think audiences would have been fine. I think it would have been truer to the character. I think it would have made him look a lot scarier. But what do you guys think?
I don't mind it at all. I honestly, the MCU has adapted many characters in various ways, and not all of them are true to the source material. I think it's less about what they look like and more about what type of performance they bring to the character. And I think Christian Bale is doing a phenomenal job with what he's given here in this movie. So I don't personally think that's a very big deal. I don't think he has to look exactly like he did in the comics. I mean, Christian Bale prior to this movie said that he never wanted to do another comic book movie after Batman. So what that says to me is like the script must have really intrigued him to bring him into this film. And if you're going to pay Christian Bale, you better fucking use his face. Like you're not going to cover that shit with CGI, especially when you're paying like Christian Bale money, So I can totally see why they're like, we'll paint him white. We'll scar up his face a bit. Like, we're not going to put dots all over his face and mask it. So I think they made the right choice. It really doesn't bother me.
Steve?
I didn't have a problem with the character design as far as like the physical features. I would have liked him to do the black hoodie because that's like the iconic like hood thing that goes with the character. I wouldn't have minded if they did that and kept his look the way that they kept it. That would have been cool because like JB said, he does look kind of like Voldemort. I didn't know that was the reason why they didn't do that part. But okay, that's fair enough. But instead of like the white robe, I feel like it would have been cooler just to go ahead and keep him in the little black hood, and that would have been really, really dope to see his eyes glow in that black hood. It would have, with the shadows and everything like that, that would have been sick. So I would have gone that route, you know what I'm saying? But you can keep him as looking the way that they had him looking in the movie, and I think that would have worked. But I didn't really have too much of a problem with it or any gripes with it.
Yeah, same. I'm good either way. I'm not, one of those people that's gonna complain about it. But I didn't mind the white either. In terms of the color palette, it makes Gore stand out on screen. When we get that fight with the shadow monsters at New Asgard, with him standing in the distance, him wearing white, it makes him stand out a lot more. When he's popping up in the middle of other people fighting, it's like the Gore's right there. If he was in black, he would blend in too much with the shadow monsters. And I think especially the black and white in like the what was it called again, Chris? The
Shadow Realm?
The Shadow Realm, sorry. Yeah.
Think Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah. So I think for those reasons, it just kind of looks better on camera for like the choices that they made. But yeah, I think he would have looked sick in the all black, like you said, Steve, with his eyes glowing. I think that would have been sick.
It would have been cool. Another
two of my favorite moments from Gore is where they're in the Shadow Realm and he's talking to Valkyrie and he's talking down to her. He's like, what did the gods ever do for you? Like, the love of your life died right in front of you. What did the gods do? He's talking to Jane. You have cancer. You're dying. You think the gods are going to come and save you? They're not. That was probably one of my favorite, like, top 2-3 favorite scenes in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Because it's just Gore breaking them down as people. Valkyrie was crying, bro. He was breaking them down. He makes Thor call for Stormbreaker by strangling the shit out of Jane. Right? So that sequence, so powerful. Everything in the Shadow Realm, some of my favorite shit in the whole movie, especially with Gore. Great shit. Some of the best stuff cinematically. When the shadow monsters come out and Jane's fighting it, I'm like, dude, this is actually insane. This is some of the best shit in the movie. Valkyrie is 1v1ing Gore with Zeus's Thunderbolt. This is lit. This is actually fucking awesome. Give me more of this shit. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I wanted more of that.
And it's crazy. She gets stabbed and she survived it. And I'm like, she gets stabbed by the necro sword. It's kind of weird.
Well, wasn't she stabbed with the lightning bolt?
I think the lightning bolt or thunderbolt stabs her. Yeah.
Okay, I've only seen it once. Okay, I've only seen it once. So I was thinking that he stabbed her with the necro sword. And I was gonna say, if that's the case, that's kind of weird that she survived that. But fair enough.
And I don't think that was a smart choice. She still could have gotten stabbed, but I am not okay with them removing Valkyrie from being able to fight in the third act, like I mentioned before. That was a huge problem for me. So let's switch to Thor. Steve, why don't you go first? Let me get some of your favorite moments with Thor in this movie.
Some of my favorite moments, I like his suit a lot.
I like the way he looked.
I didn't really fucking love Thor in this movie. I thought I would have rather this movie been centered around just Jane Foster and Valkyrie, honestly and truthfully. Thor wasn't doing anything great for me in this movie. I don't feel like his development is like, oh, okay, I'm in love. I miss Jane and I would like to get her back, et cetera, et cetera. But there was no real development in his character throughout this whole movie. He's still, at the end of this movie, he's kind of the same character that he was at the beginning of this movie. Whereas in Thor Ragnarok, he learned a lesson. I'm not, the god of thunder. I mean, the god of hammers. I'm the god of thunder. I lost my dad. I lost, you know what I'm saying? He didn't lose Heimdall in this movie. He lost Heimdall at the beginning of the
Infinity
War.
War.
But you know what I'm saying? His hammer was crushed. So he went through a lot. And then in Infinity War and things like that, he dealt with the depression and things of that nature. And just dealing with the fact that I need a second chance or I should have went for the head. All these other things in these other Thor movies, where in this movie, it kind of just was like he was pretty much the same character throughout this movie. And I didn't feel like he developed very much at all. It's a couple of one-liners in there, here and there, that were funny. But for the most part, I did not love Thor in this movie. So I don't have very much positive to say about Thor, honestly.
I love every time Chris Hemsworth suits up as Thor. I think he understands the MCU version of this character very well. He's very good at humor. He's very good at the serious moments. When he's standing in front of Zeus and he's talking about, how the mighty have fallen and how the greatest gods of gods are too scared of Gore to even band together to do anything. So I loved Chris Hemsworth acting in that moment. When he sees Jane for the first time and he talks about how hot he is and you can tell that he's freaking out, you know what I mean? I love that he's going through this midlife crisis. There is an actual arc for Thor. He's lost so much family. We saw what he went through in Infinity War and Endgame. And this is him trying to get his groove back in the middle of a midlife crisis. Not only is he trying to get back to himself, he sees Jane, and not only does he see Jane, but Jane is with Mjolnir, right? A weapon that he's constantly worried that he's not worthy to wield. Right? So I love Thor's arc throughout all of these movies. And I love it going into this too. Like I mentioned with Gore, I love the part at the end where he's telling Gore to choose love. You know what I mean? Like they fought, but what won the day was a hero talking to another person that has experienced loss. So I really love that. Chris Hemsworth is really funny. You know, I love all of his one-liners. Again, when he's at New Asgard and you see Janes for the first time, it's fucking hilarious. I love the awkwardness between them, and we'll talk about that once we talk about Thor and Jane together. But I thought Chris Hemsworth was great. The only negatives that I have is because of Taika's writing. I'm not a fan of him writing Stormbreaker like a fucking witch's broom. I thought that was dumb. The split, the Jean-Claude Van Damme split that he does between the two guys at the beginning, I'm like, this is pretty cringe, guys. Like, I'm not like enjoying this at all. And then it's like, I get that he's like broken and he doesn't know what he's doing, but he destroys the holy city, dude. Like, he just fucking destroys it. I'm like, Thor, what's going on? So it's just like
another classic Thor adventure.
So it's just like, it's not Chris Hemsworth. It's just the way that Thor is written in this movie. There's some elements that I just don't resonate with. Again, like I mentioned before, I didn't find most things funny, but I love Chris Hemsworth in this role. He loves playing Thor. He's great as Thor. And I see the arc, and I think the arc is going through pretty well with some missteps along the way. But Chris, what about you? What are your thoughts on Thor?
I don't have a problem with Thor in this movie. I love Chris Hemsworth as Thor. He's like endlessly charming every single time he plays this character. Like you said, James, he was born to play this character. And I agree with you that there is actually an arc taking place. You know, we saw in Endgame that the breakup with Jane is something that he's never really confronted. And his feelings about how it kind of transpired. You know, he wasn't really happy with how things ended. And it's just him finally seeing Jane again, seeing Mjolnir again. He's forced to confront these things and come to terms with what happened. And even, you know, rekindle that love for a short period of time over the course of the film. I really like all that stuff. I like everything between Natalie Portman and Chris Hemsworth in this film. You know, this is truthfully the first MCU romantic comedy in a way. It's like the closest we've ever gotten. You know, the MCU, and I've said this before, loves to genre bend when it comes to their movies, but they've never really had a way to tackle the rom-com before. And I think this is as close as we're ever going to get to that. But yeah, I don't mind him riding Stormbreaker like a witch. I think that was fucking hilarious. I actually really like the fact that Taika decided to make Stormbreaker sentient in this movie. My wife and I were cracking up every single time Stormbreaker would like pop around a corner as Thor is trying to summon Mjolnir to his hand. Like the fact that Stormbreaker is having problems performing because it's anxious about its relationship status with Thor. It's all working for me. I think it's all very funny. And it ties into how Thor feels about Jane and her relationship with Mjolnir in the movie. So I think all of that stuff is working really well. And honestly, I prefer the more comedic Thor to the Thor that we were getting in the first Thor movie or Dark World. You know, well, I like certain things about those performances. I prefer him this way. And I think Chris Hemsworth also prefers playing Thor this way. If he had to keep playing Thor the way he played him in Dark World, we wouldn't have a Thor 4. Like, no. He just wouldn't have come back to do it. You know, so I get that some things about what Thor does in this movie aren't working very well for some people, but I would say most of what Chris Hemsworth is doing in this film is working for me.
For sure. Like, I just think there needs to be balance, right? Like I was just saying in chat to Sherwin, like, I need there to be a balance between the first Thor and Ragnarok. Mm-hmm. Like, I need there to, of course, I want there to be humor, but I also want you to take the story seriously. Again, we have a movie about Gore the God Butcher, and it doesn't take itself very seriously in him butchering beings, right? That have huge impacts on how the universe works.
The closest we've ever gotten to this balance that you're talking about, and just from like hearing what the rest of the fan base has said about Thor and how they prefer him, you know, there's a huge spectrum of what Thor's the fan base like, you know? And I think the Infinity War Thor kind
Mhm.
of perfected that balance between Dark World Thor and Ragnarok Thor, you know, because he was still very comedic when he was talking to the Guardians and interacting with Rocket and Groot, but he also had more serious moments when he was discussing like all the tragedy that he's been through with Rocket in the film. So I think that's kind of everyone's preferred Thor. I know there's a large portion of people that did not like Fat Thor in Endgame.
Mhm.
But I won't even get into that.
Yeah. I,
But yeah, I think Infinity War is the closest, the perfect Thor that everybody can kind of align and say like, all right, that's kind of the Thor that we want going forward.
Agreed.
that's what I was expecting to get, honestly and truthfully, with this, was that kind of Thor. And like I said, I didn't have a problem with Chris Hemsworth as an actor toward Thor. I just didn't like the character Thor in this movie. There was a lot of things that I wasn't feeling. I guess when you guys break it down to the point of like he's dealing with grief and trying to get over grief and getting into his groove. Fair enough, but I just wasn't feeling it. There was a lot of stuff in this movie that for Thor in general, I just was like, if this is the case, if this is what you're going to give us out of Thor, I would rather see Mighty Thor on screen because at least we were getting like some development as far as her character dealing with her sickness and things of that nature, and then still trying to push towards something. I for one thought, you know what I'm saying, that was a more intriguing story than what we were getting out of Chris Hemsworth's Thor, because there just wasn't anything there to me other than him just, oh, I miss Milnor and then Stormbreaker coming around the corner type stuff. I just was like, I'm okay with
Totally
that.
understandable.
And the first time the Stormbreakers thing happened, I thought that was really cool. I thought it was funny. Oh, she thinks you're cheating on her, you know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. But then after a while, I was like, all right, this is like the third or fourth time they played on this joke. And I just thought it was overdid. Like, it was.
It's kind of like the goats in the film. Like there are a lot of bits in the movie where like the first time it's absolutely hilarious,
Yeah.
but by the fifth time you're like, fuck, when is this gonna end?
Yeah,
Stop.
dude. The first two times we got the goats, I was on the floor dying, bro, because
Same.
they're fucking hilarious. Like they're right off the fucking page from Thor comics. You know, they named them differently, but I was dying. But it continues and it just keeps going and going. I'm like, dude, stop. Just like
Yeah.
it's not funny anymore. Same thing with Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, right?
Mhm.
Like it was kind of funny, and then it's like we're on our way to the Shadow Realm, and then Thor starts talking about Mjolnir, and then you can see Stormbreaker start shaking and becomes unstable, and I'm like, sure, them being sent in, it's cool, but it's like quadrangle relationship thing that's happening. It would have been really funny in like a one shot,
Mhm.
you know? But in this movie, again, about Gore the fucking God Butcher, it doesn't work for me.
So the disservice that they gave this man, like, I can't believe they gave Gore the God Butcher this like, we're gonna have to wait for a what if for them to fix this. And then you killed him off too. It was like, oh my God, you could have saved him for another movie or something.
Oh, there's
Anything.
no way Christian Bale was going to do more films. The
Like,
moment he signed on, I was like, oh yeah, he's only doing this one,
Yeah.
and Gore is going to be gone after this.
I just, it's so bad. Like, oh, he deserved so much more.
Yeah.
He
So
really did.
let's move on to Jane, Mighty Thor. I love Natalie Portman. I think that there is somewhat of a like injustice given to Jane Foster in the MCU. In the first Thor film, she's essential to a lot of things. I love her being an astrophysicist, and I love the conversation between her and Thor around the fire, where he was telling her that, you know, magic is just science we don't understand yet. You know what I mean? So we just label it as magic, right? So I love
They're so
watching
far
them
from that
bond.
now.
Right.
I think
know,
she
I-
even refers to it as like magic Viking powers or something
Yeah.
at some point. Like,
But I think Natalie Portman's great. When I read the Mighty Thor run when it started in 2015, I believe, I thought it was great. I love that arc. The artwork was really, really well done. And I loved Natalie Portman's portrayal of Jane in this movie. I didn't have any issues with watching her like struggle with cancer and stuff like that. It didn't really bug me. Towards the beginning, towards the end, that was something that I really appreciated about her character. You know, when she went to the hospital, she was in bed and she was willing to stay there for a second because, you know, she loves Thor. She wants to be with Thor, but she's a hero. And Mjolnir came calling again, and she had to take the power because she knew that she had to help Thor stop Gore. So when characters have deep hero moments like that, that's a huge plus for me. When they sacrifice everything to do what needs to be done, that's a huge plus for me. The relationship between Jane and Thor, we'll get into that a little bit later. But I just thought Jane was awesome in this movie. I love all of her, you know, little catchphrases that she was trying to come up with. Eat my hammer, bring the rainbow, check out my hammer. Yeah, it's so fucking cool because, you know, she's a nerd, right? And she's a nerd that became a superhero, and she's trying out all of these catchphrases. I thought it was absolutely fucking hilarious. And every scene Jane is in, she kicks major ass. That first scene in New Asgard where she throws the hammer and then it comes back in all of the different pieces, destroying the shadow monsters. And then she catches the hammer and then the pieces all come together and she gives that look. I was like, dude, this is fucking sick. Love Jane in this movie. Everything about Jane, loved it. I love that when we get to the Shadow Realm, she figures out that Gore needs Stormbreaker. So she grabs Stormbreaker and she fucking tosses it. Like, I love how much she's involved. Again, when she shows up in the third act fight to help Thor, great hero moment where she's like, you can tell that she's supremely weak from using the hammer, but she's like, it doesn't matter. I have to do what needs to be done. She calls the lightning in order to destroy the pieces of the sword. So I loved everything about Jane in this movie. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think Natalie Portman's doing a great job. This is the best Jane Foster has ever been in the entirety of the MCU because she's given so much more to work with in this script than she has prior. Even when she was like a vessel for the ether in Dark World, there's way more for her to actually do in this film than in the prior films. But like I mentioned earlier in the episode, the only problem I had was kind of at the beginning when they were dealing with the cancer thing, introducing the fact that she has cancer to the audience. I just think it was tonally disrespectful. I think it could have been handled a little bit better. We get there by the end, like you said. You know, the closer we get to the end of the film, she's starting to look more gaunt, more sickly, paler. Like you can feel how weak she's becoming. I don't think, like, there's a line at the beginning where she jokes about, like, she says something to Darcy, like, how many stages of cancer are there? Like, she's a fucking, an astrophysicist?
Yeah,
I think she knows. And Christian Katie, one of my co-hosts from the Popaholics podcast, brought up a great point when we were talking about it. And that is some people, and I get this, deal with tragedy with comedy, you know? So it is possible that Jane Foster was trying to just bring levity to a very painful and serious situation because she doesn't know how else to deal with it. But I think, I don't know. I really don't see the character in that way. I think that's more of just Taika's writing at this time and maybe him not knowing how to introduce such a dramatic concept to a movie that is 90% comedy, you know? But overall, I like everything that she's doing in this movie besides that one thing. And her dynamic with Chris Hemsworth is the strongest it's ever been. But I know we'll talk about that in a couple minutes.
Yeah. Real quick before you go, Steve, like, just to piggyback off of what you just said, that actually, it worked for me because that's how I saw it. I know a lot of people who deal with trauma and bad stuff with humor. I'm one of those people. Same. Like if I'm having a bad day, I make a lot of jokes. That's how I deal with bad shit. So that's why it worked for me. This is the worst thing that could happen, right? And she has Darcy there to support her, and she just wants to make jokes to take her mind off of it and not think about how fucking serious it is, right? Like she's an astrophysicist. She's been to Asgard. Her boyfriend was Thor, the god of thunder, and she's about to die from stage 4 fucking cancer. So that's how I saw it. But
There is
Steve,
a
what
really
about you?
funny bit in this moment that comes back around later in the film where Darcy brings her a shit ton of snacks. And then later on in the film, Thor brings her a shit ton of snacks.
Yeah.
It's silly.
I loved her in the movie. Like Chris said, stage 4 cancer, and she apparently had been there for 6 months. She would have been like brittle. You know what I'm saying? And the only way to show it was Mjolnir draining her power. That was the only way to show it. I thought that was kind of like, yeah, you could have done more. You know what I'm saying? But I get it. It's a movie, and you wanted to show the effects of Mjolnir draining her life force. So maybe that's why. And there is a scene where she doesn't have the hammer. She looks in the mirror, and she does kind of look a little worn down a little bit. But other than that, like, I didn't have any problem with her. I thought she was done really, really well in this movie. Her basically like she's dealing with cancer, and then she's also dealing with, well, you know what I'm saying, being a hero is more important. Like, this is something that I want to do for me. And it just felt, you know what I'm saying, that feels like I've never dealt with a sickness, but I do know people that have dealt with sicknesses that were life ending or things like that. And they want to live life to the fullest before that moment happens. So that I felt like this was a good showing of that. Like, I'm living life to the fullest. I'm a superhero and I can do these things. And she just really wanted to do that. And I like that about her character. I love that scene that JB brought up with the hammer splitting into pieces, taking out a bunch of shadows. I thought that was really dope. And that was still early in the movie. I had so much hope for this. I was like, this is about to be sick. But yeah, and I loved at the end of the movie, even like I said, I would have rather either Thor fights Gore the God Butcher alone, or she shows up with Valkyrie. And then they both show up wounded, but they still get the job done. And that's what I was thinking was going to happen. A 2-on-1 fight was kind of like, I get it, the Love and Thunder aspect and their dynamic and stuff like that. I do like the way that she plays with the fact that like, she's kind of like, you can tell that she loves Thor, but she's kind of like, we broke up, kind of like it. Her dynamic versus, well, I guess we're going to talk about that in a little while, but they have a completely different dynamic on the way they view that relationship in a sense. So I thought she did really well. I thought Natalie Portman did it really well. She was really in shape for this movie. I was like, okay,
she was
this
fucking jacked, bro.
She is.
I was like, okay, yeah. So yeah, I thought I loved her character. She was really the best part of the movie outside of Gore himself. To me, it was her and Gore were the best parts of this movie.
Yeah. So let's get into Thor and Jane. And the reason why I wanted to keep this separately is because I think there's moments between these two characters that's just about Thor and Jane that's worth talking about. Something that I really, really liked was exploring why Mjolnir was calling to Jane. And I thought it was really cool that within their relationship, Thor was able to enchant the hammer and tell Mjolnir to protect Jane at all costs.
Unintentionally, too.
Unintentionally. And then we see the symbol form. It's like, holy shit, that's so fucking cool. His love for Jane and telling Mjolnir to protect Jane literally put an enchantment on it. So I thought that was very, very special to their love. I thought it was cool to get a little bit of backstory into what happened to their relationship, right? Like, these were just two people that were just extremely insecure and didn't want to do anything to ruin the relationship, so they ended up ruining the relationship, right? So I love the dynamic between them. I love how much Thor cares for Jane. You know, when she's in the hospital, he will give up anything just to keep her safe, just for them to be together. Because, like he says, it's been like 8 years, 7 months, whatever it is, and all he wants is just to be with Jane. But, like, she wants to be a hero for herself and fight to the end, fight her way. You know, so I think the duality between them and their relationship is really special, and I think it comes together really well in this film. Unlike, you know, a lot of stuff in Dark World. I think like we had some great stuff in the first Thor movie, but it really comes together in Love and Thunder. So, Chris, what about you? What are your thoughts on Thor and Jane as a couple in this film?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. You know, seeing it with my wife especially, like there were several moments where we were like, "Aw," you know. It salvages everything that we've seen so far between the two of them in the MCU in a really great way. And I love what you said, James, about like these two people being really insecure and they end up kind of imploding on themselves because of how worried they are. But there's some really great sequences filmed in the flashback montage, like them rollerblading with Mjolnir pulling both of them is hilarious. Them watching a movie on the couch with like Mjolnir laying up against Jane, or like I think they've come back from a party. I couldn't make out exactly what's on top. Is there like a giant heart, like a severed heart on top of her laying on the bed when Thor?
I think so.
It's like I don't know what party they came from, but there's like a bloody fucking heart or something, or I might be way off base, that's just resting on her chest as she's passed out on the bed when he like says the enchantment to Mjolnir. Chad, if you remember that too, let me know, because I might just be fucking crazy. But it's just fun to see the backstory, especially considering that in Ragnarok, it was like a one-liner where Thor was just like, oh, we broke up. Or like the girls trying to take the selfies with Thor.
It was a
were
mutual
like,
dumping.
Yeah, exactly. But
I guess
the moment... What, Steve?
I said, I guess that is mutual after watching it, huh?
Yeah, it kind of like, well, I mean, Jane says that he left her, which is why she had to leave a note, because he wasn't there. You know, he was off doing Avengers shit. And Thor thinks that she left him. So it's kind of this like miscommunication between the two of them. But I think the moment where they first enter the Shadow Realm and it's a close-up shot of both of their hands and they kind of just lock pinkies is like a really sweet moment between the two of them.
So adorable.
And you can tell over the course of the entire film that they both still really love each other. But it's subtle, and I like that. And I actually like that they don't end up together. It's terribly sad, but I like that it's not exactly a happy ending for both of them.
Yeah. Steve, what about you?
I do. I agree with that. I feel like they have a totally different dynamic on how they're viewing it and are approaching it too. Where like Thor is like, I'm so happy to see you, kind of like with Jane or whatever, but he's like kind of trying to play it off like, you know, he's not like super happy to see her, but he's like, so how you been and blah blah blah. And she's more so just kind of like subtle with it, like I've been cool and all this other stuff. But it's like you can tell that dynamic is different because she knows that she's hiding that information early on in the movie that she does have cancer. So she's kind of like hiding that. So she's like, I've been good, and kind of like trying to like keep her eye on the main goal and everything like that. Where Thor, all he's really doing is focusing on Jane and things like that. And I just like that little play on it where it kind of feels like, in a sense, it feels like, oh, she's playing hard to get. Like you're playing off of that, but it's like more so in a past of like, you were my past relationship, so now we're going towards the future, but I'm still like, I'm not ready to take it back to that level and get back to that step. Where Thor is like kind of in a sense rushing it to get back to that because he really wants it. And
Desperate for love.
Yeah, desperate for love. And like you said, he was doing the countdown, 8 years and however much. So he's really like, we're seeing it from that perspective of he really loves her and he wants it now. Whereas she's like pretty much got her guard up because she still has to hide the fact that she does have cancer and stuff like that, in which he finds out about later on in the movie and everything like that. But she's playing off of it and kind of like, in a sense, not necessarily giving him the cold shoulder, but distancing herself. And you know what I'm saying? And keeping her guard up. And then when you find out that dynamic of, well, you weren't there and all this other stuff, it's like you knew he was a hero when you got with him. You know what I'm saying? That kind of thing or whatever. But it's still one of those things where you can only take so much. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you felt like you could deal with this. You felt like this was something that you could be in a relationship with. I could be in a relationship with a hero. And then over time, it wears you down. And that's just one of those things. I like this dynamic of the love story that they are telling. And I like seeing it from her perspective rather than just seeing it from Thor, where all he ever does is think about the past and how much he loves her and stuff like that, where we're seeing it from her perspective of like, you know what I'm saying? Kind of felt like, you know what I'm saying, you weren't there and things like that.
Yeah, my only pushback to that would be like what I was saying earlier, where it's like they sabotaged their relationship, right? So it's like it wasn't necessarily that Thor was an Avenger and he was off saving people, but in that montage, you can see that Thor was just leaving, just to
Mhm.
leave. Like I think he was afraid of not living up to being this amazing like god being to her, and
Mhm.
I think that she didn't think that she could live up to being the girlfriend of a god,
Hmm.
right? So they were purposefully trying to find things to not be around each other so that they don't bore each other. You know,
Mhm.
I love that their relationship is very human, right? It's very
Dude,
human.
the scene where they're arguing over like the island in the kitchen and
Yeah.
Thor is complaining about like cleaning one fucking dish. That was like, I'm not saying my wife and I have those arguments, but that, like you're saying, there's a very real argument that you would have in a relationship with your spouse or
Yeah.
significant other.
Yeah. So I
It's
mean,
one fucking dish. Just clean it. Take out the garbage.
so guys, based on this review, you can tell that there's a lot of stuff to love about Thor Love and Thunder, and there's a lot of things that are just missed opportunities. I would never say that this movie is a bad movie. But I can't exactly say that it's a great movie either. It's a very middle of the road film. I personally think it's the third weakest of the Thor franchise. So just want to transition into that. Chris, starting with you, let me get your ranking, where it ranks amongst the other Thor movies, and what score do you give it out of 5?
Oh wow. It would probably come in. It's my second favorite Thor movie. You know,
Okay.
like I would rewatch this over the original Thor, and that's probably why it ranks higher.
Okay.
Again, mostly because of the visuals, and it's just kind of um, light and fluffy. I mean, it has a cancer story, which sounds ridiculous for me to say, but like Taika's kind of done this to the film, where it's mostly comedy. You know, so yeah, I would give it like a 3 or a 3.5 out of 5, which is what I've been giving most MCU content recently. Just kind of this middle of the road, mediocre content that's been pumped out for the most part. But yeah.
Yeah. Steve, what about you? Like, where does it rank amongst the other 4 movies, and what's your grade out of 5?
So this falls at 3. And you know, I just don't even remember Thor 2. Maybe if I remembered some parts of Thor 2, because I remember like the little fight in the street with like the little armor. I don't remember. I saw it that first time on opening night and I never saw it again. So I
I
don't
think you're talking
really,
about Thor 1, the fight in the street with the big
what
armor.
aren't the other 3 fighting him as well?
That's in Thor 1.
That's in
That's
Thor
in the
1?
first Thor.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't remember Thor 2 at all then.
I mean,
Thor
Um
2
technically,
has
there's a bunch of like random fights in like London because of all like the different portals. So it's like technically
they're
there's
fighting
a
the
part
Dark
of the
Elves.
fight that takes place on the street, but
Yeah, I don't. So I remember Thor 1 is the where they're fighting the ice gods, where Thor they show up to the ice gods and things like that. So Thor 1 is my second favorite one, or that's the one I remember the most. As far as these, Thor Ragnarok is number 1. This one falls at 3, and then Thor 2 Dark World falls in last just because I don't remember anything
Because
from that
Steve can't
movie.
remember it.
I don't remember anything. I
I don't
just
think you're
remember the
alone in that.
there's not much to remember if I'm being honest, man. Like making the reality stone like the ether and making it this liquid that's like inside of Jane just so it can be a MacGuffin to put Jane in danger from Malekith. It's fucking lame, bro. Like it's just lame to me. That's what it is. The relationship stuff doesn't work. Like I think they tried to give Darcy way too much humor stuff and it doesn't work. As amazing as Kat Dennings is, all of the stuff with her and her assistant, I think that stuff's fucking stupid. But anyways,
Ah,
Steve,
yeah, I
what's
don't know.
your score out of 5?
I'm gonna give this movie a 2 out of 5.
All
I
right.
just I hated this movie, and I think I hated it because of my expectations and all the research I did on Gore the God Butcher coming into it, and I think my anticipation was so high on this film for it to let me down that much. I'm giving it a 2.
I tempered my expectations because we've gotten Age of Ultron, we've gotten Ragnarok, and they're nothing like either one of those stories. So it
Yeah.
was just like, okay, sure, we're using Gore, but I at least expected to see Gore kill like a shit ton of gods. I
Yeah.
at least expected that. But for me, it'll be Thor Ragnarok, the first Thor, Love and Thunder, and then Dark World. Dark World is actually my least favorite MCU movie, period. Out of 35, 36 properties, it's my least favorite out of all the MCU. And I would actually give this a 3 out of 5. It's very middle of the road. There is a lot to appreciate, and I think all of my negatives are just missed opportunities and things that could have been rearranged. There's nothing that I would say is just like straight up fucking terrible. It's just things that didn't resonate with me. Like I mentioned, like I think the third act scene with the kids, that's again probably one of the worst things I've ever seen from the MCU. It was just so cringe to me. I couldn't do it. But yeah, 3 out of 5 is pretty solid for me. I couldn't go higher and I can't go any lower because I feel like that would be a little unfair. So 3 right in the middle for me. So
I was
before
just checking to see what I gave it on Letterboxd, and I did give it a 3.5. So
3.5. Okay.
officially, that's where it stands.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, I just wanted to briefly talk about the end credit scene and what did you guys think about the reveal of Hercules and the fact that Zeus is going to be sending Hercules to kill Thor? Chris, starting with you.
To be perfectly honest, I'm excited to see Brett Goldstein in the MCU. I love him on Ted Lasso. I couldn't care less. Like, we've gotten so many post-credit scenes over the course of the last couple movies that have introduced an obscure comic book character. And like, I know the movies were doing that before, like in Avengers, we got Thanos, but like, that was really the only time that happened over phase 2. It was still like focused on Thanos, but we've gotten so many of these. Dave Chen of the film cast calls them Blorko moments, where the film is like, and look, here's Blorko, like some nameless obscure comic book character that general audiences are like, I don't even know who that is. The Sweaties, we know who they are, but it's still kind of meaningless to me. It's cool, but it's also meaningless because it doesn't point phase 4 of the MCU in any particular direction. Like, we don't really know where this phase is going. So I don't know. I would prefer that they use these mid-credit scenes to focus in and like guide us, but they just haven't done that so far. So great to see Brett Goldstein. Couldn't give a fuck.
Steve, what
Yeah.
about you?
The way that he even like kind of shows up on the screen, he kind of feels kind of like towards the whole movie, how it's kind of been silly and stuff. Like he's even standing and he's not smiling or anything, but it just feels silly. Like with the way he's standing, like with his hands up and it still feels silly and it still feels goofy. And it's just like, and from what I know of the Avengers like storyline or whatever in Secret Wars, that he's partnered up with Goliath. Hercules is partnered up with Goliath a lot of the time. Most of the time, if you see Hercules, you see Goliath. So now I'm wondering, how does that work? You're going to do Hercules alone as a solo story. I'm wondering how that works and everything like that. I care more about the Valhalla scene than I did about this Hercules scene, honestly and truthfully.
Yeah,
Agreed.
For me personally, I don't necessarily care too much about Hercules. What I do care about is the fact that Zeus mentioned that we're going to instill fear into the hearts of people again, so that they can fear the gods again. They stop fearing us. They stop worshiping us. Like, they don't even ask for rain anymore. Like, so we are going to instill the fear of us back into humans. So wherever that goes, if they actually take it seriously, which they probably won't, I think that would be very interesting to watch Zeus and his children, some of the other gods, like maybe rampage some civilizations. It's just like, this is what happens. This is the damnation that you've brought upon yourselves for not worshiping the gods that gave you everything. So there's something there, but will the MCU fully capitalize on it? Not really sure. Steve, I love that you brought up the Valhalla scene, because I actually completely forgot about that. But I love that Jane went to Valhalla. I know that we briefly kind of just like touched on it. But I do kind of like that Jane went to Valhalla. I think as a warrior period, she earned her right in Valhalla. And I love that Heimdall was there to welcome her into the holy city. So just real quick, let me get your quick thoughts. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I like that scene a lot too. It happens in the comic books. You know, she's resurrected as a Valkyrie later on. So, I mean, it kind of leaves the door open if they want to do something like that. It's a good ending to Jane Foster and Natalie Portman in the MCU.
Steve?
It was very interesting. It made me think there's a reason why you show Idris Elba as well, and you show her again to like Chris said. I didn't know that she's resurrected as a Valkyrie, but okay. And I kind of was thinking, oh, here goes Marvel showing us another Easter egg of what a future TV show might be, a Valhalla TV show
Oh
or
my
something
God,
like
please
that.
no.
I was
Yeah,
just
stop.
thinking like, this is what we're gonna get. We're gonna get some kind of Valhalla TV show or something. I don't know what I thought we were gonna get, but I was still intrigued by it. I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. We see more afterlife. That's been like a big thing in the phase of seeing afterlives and stuff like that, where we saw it in Moon Knight. They kind of talk about the T'Challa and Killmonger's little scene is kind of like an afterlife-esque type thing going on. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is their way of showing more afterlife, which is something, their little theme that they've been running with inside of this entire phase of just talking about different afterlives and stuff like that. So I was just more intrigued on that than I ever was with the Hercules situation.
Yeah, I definitely think they're going to bring Jane back as a Valkyrie. There's no way they just got Natalie Portman to come to just do this. I think she'll definitely be back as a Valkyrie. There was one thing that after I saw it the second time, I was like, it would have kind of been funny if Heimdall and Loki welcomed her to Valhalla.
Oh my
I
gosh.
think it would have been nice to show that Loki made it to Valhalla, because I think he should have. After Ragnarok and Infinity War, I think he earned his place in Valhalla where he belongs.
Mhm.
So I thought that would have been funny and cool at the same time. But that's gonna do it for our Thor Love and Thunder movie review. I love this breakdown. I think we did a really good job of, with the character breakdowns and going through everything and talking about all the points that we really, really liked, the things that we think that didn't work, the things that could have been better. Guys in chat, thank all of you for being here. I really appreciate you guys. Chris, tell the people where they can find you online.
You can find me on Twitter at Chris Conkling, talking about all things nerdy, video games, television, movies, comics, collectibles. If it's nerdy, I'm talking about it. And then, of course, you can find my podcast, Popaholics, on Twitter at Popaholics. We're on YouTube, youtube.com/Popaholics, Instagram, PopaholicsCast. And you can email us at popaholicscast@gmail.com. And then now you can find all my nerdy ramblings on a monthly basis at carefulforspoilers.com.
Steve?
Nice. Yeah, you can follow me at ScoopSteve1428 on all social media, and also you can find one of my articles once a month on Careful for Spoilers. Also, you can follow the Inside the Mind of a Blerd page. It's the Mind of a Blerd on Twitter or whatever. That's the @ And yeah, man, we got a Linktree on there that can lead you to everybody to see all the great content that we're putting out and everything like that.
Yeah. Make sure you check out their articles on the website. Steve and Chris write incredible articles. I'm very proud to have their articles on the website. Make sure you check out their content individually. Check out Popaholics. Check out Inside the Mind of the Blerd. Really great podcast platforms. So check them out over there. You can find me all over social media at JB Exclusive. You can also find my articles and everything else that I do on carefulwithspoilers.com. Check out the merch store. Check out the Patreon. We also have links to all of our social media, all of the podcasts on the C4S Podcast Network. You've got You Gotta See This, the Recast Cast. You got Villains on there. We got a bunch of lit content for you guys. So head over to carefulwithspoilers.com and find absolutely everything that we do. But again, Chris, Steve, thank you so much for joining me for this review. It was great to have Vash here as well to do the review. Chat, again, I appreciate you guys every time you show up every single Friday consistently to be here to talk nerd shit with us. So I really, really appreciate every single one of you guys that showed up. But until next Friday, when we talk about the full recap for San Diego Comic-Con, we will see you guys on the next one.